Everyone at Brookhaven Third High thought I slept through class because I was lazy, weak, and broke. What they never knew was that every time my eyes closed, I was dragged 10,000 years into the ruined future of our world, where sleep was not rest. It was survival training. So when Marcus Holt slammed my desk hard enough to knock gray ash from under my thumbnail, the whole class saw a loser waking up, but I already knew something had started waking up inside me. That was the part no one noticed. The whole class at Brookhaven Third High noticed my face stuck to the desk. They noticed Brandon Cole leaning back with his polished supplement case open like a rich kid altar. They noticed Owen Price trying to kick my chair before Marcus got louder. Nobody noticed the ash. Marcus planted both hands on my desk and said, "Caleb Mercer, since sleeping is your best technique, why don't you teach the class?" The room laughed before I lifted my head. Brandon laughed the hardest. He held up one silver vial from his premium supplement case and said, "Don't be cruel, Marcus. If Caleb stands up too fast, he might pass out from ambition." A girl in the back snorted. Someone slapped a desk. Owen muttered, "Shut up!" but his voice vanished under the noise. I wiped the ash against my pants and tasted metal in my mouth. Marcus saw the movement. His jaw tightened. "Eyes forward. If you can't stay awake for basic combat theory, don't waste everyone else's time." At that moment, I deserved half the insult. My grades were average. My pulse index was pathetic. My family could not buy the tonics Brandon treated like breath mints. For weeks I had been falling asleep in class, on buses, at dinner, even standing in the shower. But I was not resting. Every time my eyes closed, I went somewhere else. The second bell rang. Marcus turned back to the board. The class settled. Brandon slid the silver vial back into its case with a little click, like he was putting away proof that we were not born equal. Owen leaned close enough for only me to hear. "Caleb, your hand is bleeding." I looked down. My nail had split around a black line of ash. Under the blood, a bite-shaped bruise wrapped my wrist. That bruise had not been there before class. I tried to answer Owen, but the room stretched. Marcus's voice thinned. The white board became a wall of dirty light. Then Brookhaven Third High disappeared. I hit cracked pavement on one knee. The sky above me was red-black, and the air smelled like rainwater left inside a coffin. Broken towers leaned over a street buried in ash. Cars were rusted to their frames. A traffic light swung with no wind, blinking the same dead yellow. I had been there before. I had run before. This time, the corpse found me first. It came out from behind a burned bus with its jaw hanging sideways and school uniform scraps stuck to its ribs. Not my school's uniform, not any uniform I knew. Its fingers were peeled down to the bone and the nails clicked against the pavement as it crawled faster than a living person should crawl. I backed up until my heel hit a chunk of concrete. The corpse lunged. My old self would have screamed and tried to crawl away. My old self had done exactly that in the first nightmare. I still had the scratches on my arm from where I had woken up shaking. This time, I grabbed the concrete. The corpse hit my chest and knocked the air out of me. Its teeth snapped an inch from my throat. Its breath smelled like spoiled meat and hot copper. I shoved my forearm into its mouth before it could bite deeper, and pain flashed white up my arm. I stopped thinking. I slammed the chunk of concrete into its temple. Once, the corpse clawed my shoulder. Twice, its jaw cracked. 3 times, its skull caved in, and black smoke poured out like it had been waiting for permission. The smoke did not drift away. It entered me. I fell sideways, choking. For one ugly second, I thought the corpse had infected me. Then the memories hit. Not words, not a neat lesson. Movement. How to put weight behind a strike even when my body was weak. How to turn my hips before my arm. How to smell danger through dust. How to keep moving after pain because dead things did not care if I was tired. My wrist burned. My shoulder locked. My stomach twisted with a hunger so violent I almost curled up on the pavement. A second corpse shrieked from the bus. I pushed myself up before it reached me. Its hand cut through the space where my face had been. I stepped aside without planning it, as if the first corpse's broken instincts had crawled into my bones. My fingers closed around a rusted pipe. The second corpse jumped. I swung. The pipe bent around its head, and the street went quiet. Black smoke entered me again. This time, I stayed on my feet. I woke up to Owen shaking my shoulder and Marcus shouting my name. My desk had slid 2 feet across the floor. The whole class was staring. Brandon's smile had thinned, but he still had enough courage to talk. "That's new," Brandon said. "Did Sleeping Beauty finally have a nightmare?" I looked at my wrist. The bite-shaped bruise was gone. The split nail had sealed. A line of black ash still sat under the edge. Marcus grabbed my shoulder and turned me toward the door. "Nurse, now! Owen, walk with him!" Brandon called after me. "Careful, Price. If he falls asleep, you might have to carry him like his mom does." Owen stopped. I caught his sleeve before he turned around. "Not here." Owen stared at me. He had known me since we were kids. He knew the version of me who swallowed insults because fighting cost money. He also saw my hand, healed and steady. His anger changed into fear. That was the first person who understood the nightmare had crossed over. I did not go to the nurse. I went to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, and looked in the mirror. My skin had color for the first time in weeks. My shoulders filled my shirt differently. When I pressed my fingers into the sink, the sheet metal groaned. Owen heard it. "Caleb, what did you take?" "Nothing." "Then what happened?" I looked at the bent sink edge and gave him the safest truth I had. I survived something. Owen waited for more. I did not give it to him. By the time I got home, hunger had turned into a second heartbeat. Linda Mercer had left dinner on the stove because she worked late and still tried to feed us like food could solve everything. Frank Mercer sat at the table with bills spread out beside a single-family tonic bottle. The bottle was cheap by Brandon's standards and expensive by ours. It had been bought for Nora Mercer because my little sister's pulse index actually deserved investment. Nora saw me reach for the pot and raised one eyebrow. "You sleep through school and now you eat like you passed the National Marshal exam?" "Move your hand," I told her. She blinked. "Excuse me? You're blocking the rice." Nora pulled the bowl closer just to be petty. 2 days earlier, I would have let her win. That night, I took the whole pot, sat down, and started eating. Frank lowered one bill. "Caleb, leave some for your sister. I'll cook more," I said with my mouth full. Nora stared at my arms. Her teasing slipped. "When did you get shoulders?" I almost laughed. I had been humiliated all morning, bitten in a dead city, and punched a corpse until its memories entered me. My sister noticed the shoulders. That was family. Nora was not done. She reached into her bag, pulled out a cheap grip trainer, and tossed it at my chest. "Squeeze it." "Why?" "Because if you are faking mysterious shoulders, I want evidence before our mother starts worrying," Frank said. "Nora!" She ignored him. I squeezed once, lightly. The spring snapped inside the plastic handle. One half dropped into my bowl. Nora's face changed faster than the pulse index screen would later. She stopped being the talented sister teasing the deadweight brother. For 1 second, she looked at me like I had come home wearing someone else's body. I set the broken grip trainer beside her plate. "Bad quality." "That was mine," she said. "Then use the tonic." After dinner, I took the family tonic bottle and set it in front of Nora. She frowned. "That's mine." "I know. Use it tomorrow. You're not stealing it. I need better than that." Nora's mouth opened, then closed. Frank and Linda heard the sentence from the kitchen. "Nobody in our house said things like that. We counted discounts. We stretched soup. We did not talk about needing better." I left before they could ask. Brookhaven Marshall Authority kept a public testing room open late for students who could not afford private clubs. The machines were old, scratched, and honest. You paid a few dollars, put your hand on a sensor, and watched the pulse index screen tell you whether your dreams were stupid. Owen met me there because he was too worried to stay away. The worker behind the counter barely looked up. "No refunds if you don't like your number." "I won't need one," I said. Owen shot me a look. "Since when do you talk like Brandon?" "Since Brandon became a low standard." The pulse index screen lit under my palm. My last school reading had been so average Marcus barely bothered to write it down. The number climbing on that public screen did not stop at average. It passed Nora's last result. It passed the mark Marcus used for serious students. It stopped high enough that the worker stood up. "Retest," he said. I pulled my hand away. "No. Strike dummy first." The strike dummy was patched rubber over a steel post. Students hit it all night and bragged when the display gave them 3 digits. I remembered the corpse's hip turn. I stepped in and punched once. The dummy folded around my fist. The base scraped backward and hit the wall hard enough to crack the plaster. The workers stared at the damage. Owen stared at me. I stared at my fist. It had not even hurt. The worker swallowed and pointed at the door. "Leave before I decide whether to charge you for that." "Put it on Brandon Cole's account," Owen said. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. The next morning, the rumor reached class before I did. Brandon had his premium supplement case open again, but now the silver vials looked less like treasure and more like an apology from rich parents. He waited until Marcus called us onto the mats for combat practice. Then Brandon raised his hand. "Marcus," Brandon said, making sure the class heard every word. "Caleb's public score is floating around StarWeb. Since he's suddenly amazing, I volunteered to help him demonstrate. Safely." Marcus looked at me. "Caleb, you don't have to accept." That was the first kind thing Marcus said to me all week. Brandon ruined it by laughing. "Let him accept. I'll show him how to fall without breaking his face. Poor students need practical lessons." Owen said, "Marcus, this is stupid." Marcus lifted a hand to quiet him, but his eyes stayed on me. The number floating around StarWeb had reached him too. The class leaned toward Brandon like they were waiting for the sleeping loser to get put back where he belonged. I stepped onto the mat. Brandon rolled his shoulders. He had good posture, clean gear, expensive shoes, and the confidence of someone who had never had to fight hungry. He said to me, "Tap out when your knees shake. I don't want your parents begging my family for medical bills." I said, "Don't land on your supplement case, it looks fragile." The class laughed for the wrong reason. Brandon heard it and flushed. He moved first. He was fast compared to the students around us. He was neat. He was trained. He threw a clean opening kick toward my ribs, the kind Marcus used in demonstrations. The corpse from the dead street had been uglier, slower, and much more honest. I stepped inside Brandon's kick. His eyes widened. I punched him once in the chest. The sound was not loud. That made it worse. Brandon left the mat like someone had pulled him backward by a cable. He hit the padded wall, slid down, and sat there with both hands frozen over his chest. His mouth opened, but no insult came out. The class did not laugh. Marcus crossed the mat fast and dropped beside Brandon. "Match over. Nobody moves." Owen whispered my name from the edge of the room. I heard the fear in it again, but this time there was something else under it. Relief. Brandon coughed, tried to stand, and failed in front of everyone who had laughed with him yesterday. His supplement case lay open beside the mat. One silver vial rolled out, tapped the floor, and stopped at my shoe. I picked it up and set it back in the case. "Save those," I told Brandon. "You need the help." His face went red, then gray. Marcus looked from Brandon to me. His expression had changed completely. Suspicion did what praise could not. It made him careful. "Caleb," Marcus said, loud enough for the class and Brandon to hear, "you're coming with me after school. Private retest, full panel." Brandon wheezed. "He's using enhancers." Marcus did not deny it. The stretcher came 10 minutes later. I had been tired for years, but I was not harmless anymore. That should have felt like a clean win. Instead, Marcus locked the combat room door after the last bell. Owen stood outside pretending not to listen, and a private pulse index needle pressed against my skin. The machine clicked. The needle bent. The needle bent before it drew blood. Marcus Holt stared at it like the metal had insulted him personally. The private testing room under Brookhaven Third High was supposed to be better than the public machines at Brookhaven Marshall Authority. Cleaner sensors, harder strike plates. A sealed enhancer screen that could catch cheap tonics, black market pills, and whatever rich families bought when they wanted their children to look naturally gifted. The needle curled against my skin and refused to enter. Marcus pulled it away slowly. "Again!" "That's your plan?" I asked. "Keep poking until the machine apologizes?" "My plan," Marcus said, keeping his voice low, "is to find out whether you cheated before Brandon Cole's parents turn this school into a courtroom." Owen stood beyond the glass with both hands shoved into his pockets. Marcus had let him stay because Owen had walked me from class and because Owen looked ready to bite anyone who dragged me away alone. That loyalty made the room feel smaller. Marcus replaced the needle and pressed the trigger. It bent again. The machine flashed red, then yellow, then told Marcus to recalibrate. Marcus swore under his breath. He moved me to the strike plate. "One hit, controlled, do not show off." I wasn't showing off with Brandon. That is what worries me. I stood in front of the plate. The corpse memory stirred under my skin. Not thoughts exactly. More like a body I had never trained for telling me the angle was wrong. The plate was weak near the edge, and Marcus was trying not to look scared. I turned my fist inward and hit the center. The strike index number jumped. The plate cracked. The lights above us flickered, and Owen's face appeared closer to the glass. Marcus did not speak for several seconds. Then he walked to the door, opened it, and told Owen, "Go home." Owen said, "No." Marcus looked at him. "Price, if you want to help him, go home and forget every number you saw." Owen looked at me through the glass. I nodded once. He hated it, but he left. When the outer door shut, Marcus turned back to me. The anger had drained out of him. Suspicion stayed, but now it had company. "Calculation. No enhancer marker," he said. "No illegal stimulant trace. No tonic residue strong enough to explain this. Your skin just bent a puncture needle, and a school strike plate cracked under a controlled hit. So Brandon was wrong. Brandon is an idiot with a rich family and a bruised chest." Marcus folded his arms. "That doesn't make you safe. It makes you valuable. Valuable students get stolen, pressured, sponsored, or crushed by people who want their own name on the file." I said nothing. He stepped closer. "Tell me what happened." I gave him the same amount of truth I had given Owen. "I found the method." "Where?" "I can't say." Marcus's eyes sharpened. "Can't or won't?" "Both." That answer should have made him angrier. Instead, Marcus laughed once, short and bitter. "Fine. Keep your miracle." He opened a locked cabinet and pulled out a black card in a plain sleeve. "This is school discretionary support. Meals, basic tonics, training room access, and private study cover. You will not brag. You will not sell whatever you found. You will not accept Brandon's apology if his family sends one with a hook inside." I looked at the card. A week earlier, that little rectangle would have been the biggest status object I had ever touched. Now it looked like a lunch ticket for a starving animal. Marcus slapped it into my palm. "I can protect you from school gossip. I can't protect you from yourself. Then don't try too hard, I said. He opened a message on his tablet and turned it just far enough for me to see Brandon's name in the subject line. His family wants you suspended until an enhancer panel clears. The principal wants quiet. I told them the school equipment malfunctioned and I needed 48 hours. You lied for me? I bought time for a student who might be a breakthrough or a disaster. Do not make me regret which word I used. The black card stopped feeling like a gift. It became a clock. 48 hours before Brandon's family pushed harder, before the school asked for cleaner answers, before my secret method had to survive adults with lawyers and status. Marcus's mouth twitched like he wanted to be offended and failed. Use the old equipment room if you need to sleep. If anyone asks, you're on a private study plan because you nearly put a classmate through a wall. Nearly? Do not make jokes in my testing room. I put the black card in my pocket. The card made trouble before it bought anything. At lunch, I used it in the school cafeteria and ordered 3 trays because my stomach had started treating normal meals like rumors. The cashier scanned the card, saw the approval tier and looked over my shoulder for Marcus. Brandon's friends saw it too. They had been loud that morning. They got quiet when the register accepted a support level usually reserved for county finalists. One of them muttered, "Since when does Mercer get sponsored?" Owen heard him and said, "Since Brandon became a medical expense." I almost choked on the first tray. Owen did not smile. He watched the table, the door, and my hands like he expected the next problem to crawl in through the ceiling. "You are scaring people," he said quietly. "Good. Not only Brandon's people." He tapped the edge of my tray, not hard enough to spill it. "You used to disappear when people looked at you. Now you look like you are waiting for them to try something." "Maybe I am. Then pick who gets to notice." That landed harder. Owen had defended me when I was useless. Now he was defending other people from guessing too much. The first official accusation had collapsed into sponsorship. Useful! Dangerous! Marcus knew I was not normal. Owen knew enough to worry. Brandon's pride now had a stretcher bill attached to it. I needed answers before the whole school started guessing, so I did the most suspicious thing possible. I went to sleep. Marcus's old equipment room smelled like rubber mats, dust, and cleaning spray. I locked the door, sat between 2 cracked practice shields, and closed my eyes before I could talk myself out of it. The dead city took me before the first breath finished. This time, I did not wake in the street where I had killed the corpses. I stood at the edge of a sunken avenue, staring at a collapsed county sign half buried in ash. The letters were cracked, but I could still read the part that mattered. Brookhaven County. My stomach went cold. Not because the words were strange, because they were not. Same language, same county, same road symbol, twisted by age and heat. The nightmare had always felt like another world because I wanted it to be another world. It was easier to fear a monster planet than my own home rotting under a dead sky. A siren chirped from the ruins ahead. Blue light flickered behind a crushed security door. Above it, a wall plate still glowed through dust. Astor Base 1359. I had seen that number in the distance before and run the other way. That day, I had 2 corpse memories, a black card in my real pocket and a body that no longer shook after one punch. I picked up a metal bar and walked in. The first corridor tried to kill me with 2 corpses and a ceiling panel that fell without warning. I smashed one corpse into the wall, kicked the second down a stairwell, and ducked under the panel because the dead thing's memory recognized the groan in the bolts. The deeper I went, the less the place looked like a shelter, and the more it looked like a grave built by engineers. At the bottom, a terminal waited behind cracked glass. When I wiped the dust away, the screen woke up. A calm voice filled the room. "Biometric trace detected. Living human confirmed. State your name." I almost hit it. Instead, I said, "Caleb Mercer." The screen stuttered. Lines of text poured down faster than I could read. The voice returned, softer and far more awake. "Caleb Mercer identified. Archive conflict detected. Historical record unstable. Welcome to Astor Base 1359. I am Nova. Fireseed Archive Interface." The metal bar slid in my sweaty hand. "What year is this?" I asked. Nova answered with a number that did not belong in any classroom timeline. 10,000 years. The room did not need to shake. The answer did it for me. I was not dreaming of a monster world. I was looting the future corpse of my own. Nova continued. "Local map confirms former Brookhaven region. Population, extinct. Surface hazard, extreme. Archive access limited by living compatibility and combat clearance." Who did this? "Clearance insufficient." How do I get clearance? Survive, kill, integrate, return. The answer was cruel, simple, and useful. That made it more trustworthy than comfort. A side panel opened beside the terminal. Behind cracked glass sat 3 storage cards, each one stamped with warning marks and a dead access light. Nova tried to unlock them. 2 stayed dark. 1 flickered when I put my bloody hand against the scanner. "Living compatibility confirmed," Nova said. Historical conflict deepening. Personal record search recommended. Stop, I said. The terminal went silent. I did not need a history lecture. I needed the one thing the nightmare had been dragging in front of me since the first corpse crawled out of ash. Search Caleb Mercer, I said. Nova took 1 second. That 1 second lasted longer than Brandon hitting the wall. A file opened. My face appeared on the terminal, younger, grainy, and attached to a record that made my ribs tighten. The file listed Caleb Mercer as low aptitude, no public tier, negligible contribution, and a civilian casualty in an early rift breach near Brookhaven. No titles, no known archive impact, no heroic footnote. The old Caleb Mercer had died as background damage. No speech, no heroic last stand, no family saved, just one more body in a county that became a ruin. I stared until the words blurred. Then the file flickered. Nova said, conflict expanding. Recent anomaly detected in historical layer. Recalculating. The same record tore itself apart and rebuilt line by line. The new file still carried my name, but the verdict had changed. My aptitude was marked unstable. My first combat deviation had been detected. Future memory compatibility was confirmed. My survival window had extended, and the Fireseed archive gave me provisional clearance. A new tab opened beside my death file. A method access menu opened. Star Body Method. Natural Breath. Crystal Mind Method. Sunbreaker Fist. Tier 11 future classification warnings crawled under each card like little legal threats written by dead people. I had not become safe. I had become editable. That was worse and better in the exact way that ruins a normal life. I touched the first method card. Pain drove me to one knee. Not injury. Instruction. The Star Body Method burned through my muscles as a sequence of stances, breath locks, and pressure points carved itself into memory. Natural breath followed, less violent but deeper, teaching my lungs how to steal more from every inhale. Crystal Mind Method brushed against the part of me that had felt the dead corpses before they moved. Sunbreaker Fist landed last, and my right arm went numb to the shoulder. Nova said, warning. Present body lacks nutrition, tonic support, marrow conditioning, and stable spirit capacity. Continued advancement risks collapse. Translate that like I'm not a dead archive technician, I said through my teeth. You are starving your future, Nova said. That was clear enough. I asked for weapons next. A blade design opened, then locked behind materials I could not pronounce. I asked for money. Nova showed me 3 dead banking systems and a currency table that was 10,000 years too late to help my parents with rent. I asked for the fastest safe path. The terminal paused. For a machine, Nova had excellent timing for making a person feel poor. The screen shifted. A resource compensation list opened. Most entries needed materials I had never seen, money I did not have, or authority I could not fake. Then one formula glowed at the bottom. A basic stabilizing tonic. Cheap ingredients. Current era compatibility? High. Projected market comparison, 10 times stronger than common student tonics at under half production cost. I laughed so hard it hurt. Brandon had a supplement case. Marcus had a black card. My family had one tonic bottle we treated like fragile glass. The future handed me an industry knife and asked whether I wanted to cut. A corpse shrieked from the corridor behind me. Nova's screen dimmed. Combat clearance opportunity detected. Survived to retain download. You could have led with that. The corpse burst through the door. I used Sunbreaker Fist for the first time. My arm moved badly. Too much force, not enough control. The punch still hit with a short burst of heat that cracked the corpse's sternum and threw it into the terminal wall. Black smoke entered my chest. The Star Body Method swallowed it like fuel. I woke on the floor of Marcus's equipment room with the black card digging into my hip and my stomach trying to eat my spine. Someone knocked on the door. Marcus called from outside. Caleb, if you're dead, say so. I sat up, shaking and starving, with Tier 11 method cards burned into memory and a formula bright behind my eyes. Not dead, I said, then opened the door. I looked at the black card, then at my hand. My knuckles were smoking faintly. I did not open the door right away. I had a method. I had a sponsor. I had proof that my future death could move. Now I needed money, food, and a place where nobody would ask why a broke student had suddenly invented a tonic strong enough to ruin people with real companies. The Fireseed archive formula stayed in my mind, cheap enough to make and strong enough to start a war in a boardroom. The future formula looked harmless on paper. That was the first funny thing about it. The second funny thing was that I could buy most of the ingredients with Marcus Holt's black card and a fake calm expression at 3 different stores in Brookhaven. The clerk at the last counter looked at my school jacket, looked at the cheap stabilizers and said, "Science project? Something like that," I said. That was not a lie. It was just a science project that might bankrupt every student tonic brand in the county. I did not build a lab empire. I rented 2 hours at Hayes Lab under a student-use slot, scrubbed one metal bench myself, and followed the Fireseed archive formula without writing down the parts that mattered. No recipe chain. No heroic research montage. I mixed, heated, ruined one batch, cursed under my breath, and made the second batch glow the exact pale blue Nova had shown me. Then I drank one mouthful. My stomach stopped screaming. My pulse steadied. Star Body Method, which had been grinding through my muscles like a hungry machine, settled into a clean rhythm. The tonic did not make me drunk or bright-eyed like Brandon Cole's silver vials. It made my body feel like someone had finally paid a debt. I poured the rest into a plain sample tube, left it in the testing rack, and walked out before the rental timer ended. A good trap did not need teeth showing. It needed the right person to touch the bait. Serena Hayes called me before dinner. Her voice came through smooth and polished. "This is Serena Hayes from Hayes Therapeutics. Am I speaking with Caleb Mercer?" I was standing outside a cheap burger place with 4 bags of food in one hand and the black card in the other. Depends who was asking. The owner of the lab where you left a sample that should not exist. I bit into a burger and let her hear me chewing. There was a pause. Serena said, "Are you eating right now?" "Yes." "During a business call?" "You called during dinner." Another pause. Shorter, sharper. "Meet me tomorrow," Serena said. "Grand C Hotel, private room. Bring whatever notes produced that tonic." "No notes." "Then bring your memory. That costs more." Serena laughed with clean business polish, as if the call was supposed to sound amusing instead of dangerous. "You're a high school student with a lab rental record and no company. Don't mistake one lucky sample for leverage." I looked at the burger bags. Then at the black card. Then at the city lights of Brookhaven, where rich families paid more for 1 month of supplements than my parents had saved in a year. "Serena," I said, using her name because she had used mine first. "If you thought it was luck, you wouldn't be calling before the sample finished cooling." The line went quiet. When she spoke again, the polish stayed, but the amusement was gone. "Noon. Don't be late." I was late by 9 minutes, not because I wanted to impress her. Because the Star Body Method burned through breakfast, second breakfast, and the sandwich I bought on the way there. Grand C Hotel put me in a private room bigger than my family's kitchen and living room combined. Serena Hayes sat at the far side of the table in a cream jacket with a tablet, a contract folder, and the kind of smile adults use when they want a child to feel managed before the first word. I did not need her private thoughts. The room said enough. She had chosen the hotel. She had chosen the table. She had chosen the expensive bottled water and the view. She had also ordered nothing. Clean room, clean contract, clean little student. I picked up the menu. Serena's smile held. "Hungry, always!" I ordered steak, pasta, 2 seafood plates, 3 sides, soup, dessert, and enough takeout to make the server check Serena's face for permission. Serena gave it with one small nod. That nod bought her the most expensive lunch of her month. While the plates arrived, she slid the tablet toward me. "Your sample tested at 9.8 times the recovery value of common student tonics. Ingredient cost is absurdly low. No toxic markers. No stimulant crash. If this scales, Hayes Therapeutics can own the student recovery market in 6 months." "No," I said. Serena blinked. "No, to which part?" "To Hayes Therapeutics owning it." The server set down the first plate. I started eating. Serena waited until the server left. "Caleb, I can bury this sample as easily as I can develop it. I have licensing channels, production lines, compliance staff, investors, and people who understand contracts. You have a school jacket and an appetite problem." I cut into the steak. "You also have debt." Her hand stilled near the tablet. That part I had not guessed from her mind. I had seen it in the cracked polish under the meeting. The hotel room was too expensive for someone relaxed. The lab equipment at Hayes Lab was maintained but not new. Her call came too fast. Desperate people moved fast and called it decisive. Serena said, "Careful. You need a product that scares your investors back into patience. I need resources, privacy, and protection from people who ask too many questions. We can waste time pretending you are buying my formula, or we can write the real deal." Her voice cooled. "What do you want?" 90%. Serena stared at me. I kept eating. She leaned back. 90% of what? Net profits from the formula line. I keep formula control. Hayes Therapeutics handles production, sales, and legal noise. You provide monthly resources through a private channel. If someone tries to steal it, you warn me. If someone comes after my family because of it, you help me bury them financially before I handle the rest. The words made the room colder. Serena said very slowly, "You are threatening retaliation in a business negotiation." "No, I'm adding a service requirement." Her laugh this time was real and not friendly. "You are either insane or badly raised. Both are cheaper than being naive." She opened the folder and pushed a first contract toward me. 20% and a consulting fee. That is generous for a student. I wiped my mouth, stood, and picked up the takeout bags. Serena's smile vanished. Sit down. No, Caleb, I looked at her. You tested the sample. You know what it does. You also know you cannot recreate the missing step, or I would be talking to your attorney instead of you. Serena said nothing. I pointed at the contract folder. 90%, resource pipeline, protection clause, my formula control. You keep 10% and your company alive. Refuse, and I find someone else before dessert gets cold. The server returned with the bill at the worst possible time for Serena and the best possible time for me. He placed it beside her hand. Her eyes flicked to the total. For half a second, the owner of Hayes Therapeutics looked personally betrayed by seafood. I said, business expenses are rough. Serena signed a new draft 20 minutes later. The Hayes Therapeutics contract was not perfect. Nothing made in one hotel room over 3 desserts ever was. But it gave me what I needed: money, materials, private supply, and an adult shield with enough greed to keep her loyal as long as I stayed valuable. Before I signed, Serena tapped one clause with her pen. Monthly resources are not a blank check. Correct, I said. They are a minimum. You are very comfortable being hated. Hate is quiet when profit is loud. She signed after that, which told me more than any polite agreement could have. When I left, Serena stood by the window with her arms folded. She said, I thought you were a lucky boy with a stolen recipe. You were half right. Which half? I'm lucky. I left her with the bill. The formula solved one problem and created a louder one. 3 days later, Marcus handed me an envelope from Eastern Defense Command and looked like he had swallowed a nail. Morning Star Selection Preparatory Camp, he said. Do not ask me how your name got pulled this fast. I sent one quiet file to keep Brandon's family off your back. Someone higher up noticed. Good, not good. They will test you against students who have been fed resources since they could walk. Don't treat this like class sparring. I won't. Marcus narrowed his eyes. That was too quick. Class sparring had rules. He stared for a moment, then shoved the envelope against my chest. Go pack. And Caleb? What? Try not to break national property. I should have promised. I arrived at the Eastern Defense Command training field late, hungry, and carrying no visible badge because the registration desk had misplaced my packet. That was all it took. The candidates near the assessment gate looked me up and down like I had wandered in from a bus stop. Miles Keene smirked first. Lost? Kira Lang glanced at my plain jacket. Spectators used the other entrance. Derek Stone walked through the middle of them with the relaxed shoulders of someone used to being the strongest person in a room. He had a training badge already clipped to his chest and a crowd giving him space. He looked at me and said, If you're staff, carry my bag. If you're a candidate, this camp is getting charitable. I was tired from travel, empty from training, and still thinking about the seafood bill, so I said, I charge extra for charity. The group laughed. Derek did not. A supervisor at the gate checked a tablet, frowned at my name, and said, Caleb Mercer, you were supposed to report 2 hours ago. I was eating. The supervisor stared. You delayed a national assessment for lunch? Lunch delayed me. I kept eating. Kira covered her mouth. Miles laughed louder. Derek stepped closer. Put him in the puppet lane, Derek said to the supervisor. If he survives 30 seconds, maybe he can watch real candidates train. The supervisor did not like Derek giving orders, but he liked my missing badge less. He pointed toward a steel corridor lined with combat puppets. Baseline assessment! No lethal force! Stop when the red lights activate. I heard combat puppets and stop. The dead city had taught me the things shaped like people usually kept moving until the head broke. The first puppet rushed me with a rubber blade. I broke its arm, stepped through its guard, and drove it into the second puppet hard enough to fold both frames. The red lights flashed. I thought that meant the next stage had started, so I kept going. The third puppet lost its head. The fourth hit the ceiling. The fifth triggered a wall panel, and a sixth came from behind fast enough to make the candidates outside stop laughing. I used Sunbreaker Fist too hard. The sixth puppet exploded into parts. The supervisor shouted, Stop! He entered the lane at the exact wrong angle. My body moved before my manners did. I caught his wrist, turned, and put him on the floor so fast his tablet bounced out the gate. The whole training field went silent. I looked down at him. He was breathing, glaring, and alive. You said no lethal force, I told him. From the back of the crowd, a woman's voice cut through the silence. He meant against the puppets. Claire Donovan walked toward the lane in an Eastern Defense Command jacket, eyes fixed on the broken machines around me. She did not look impressed. She looked like she had just found a weapon in a place that was supposed to hold students. The supervisor sat up with help from another staff member and pointed at me. Assessment irregularity. Full review. Claire picked up his tablet, checked the numbers, and said, No, assessment complete. Derek laughed once. Complete? He broke the lane and attacked staff. Claire turned the tablet so everyone could see the score. The lane registered 6 combat puppets disabled, 1 supervisor mistake, and no injury requiring removal. The point algorithm has already issued his provisional card. A staff member carried over a white point card. Most candidates had colored cards with neat numbers stamped in the corner. Miles had 100, Kira had 100, Derek, the field favorite, had 100. My white point card read 1000. That number did more damage than the puppets. Miles stopped smiling. Kira looked from the card to Claire. Derek's face hardened in a way I recognized from Brandon right before the mat ended his social life. Derek stepped into the lane. Favoritism. Claire said, "Stone, step back." Derek ignored her and pointed at my card. "No late. Nobody walks in with 10 times my points because a machine glitched. Prove it." The candidates shifted closer. Claire's voice sharpened. "Derek Stone, this is not a challenge platform." I slid the white point card into my pocket. "It's fine," I said. Derek smiled. "Good, at least he can pretend to be brave." He raised his guard, widened his stance, and gathered enough force in his shoulders to impress the students behind him. I lifted one finger. Derek's smile twitched. "What is that supposed to mean?" "Budget answer," I said. "You are not worth a full punch." He lunged. I flicked him in the center of the chest. Derek Stone hit the wall so hard the training field scoreboard rattled. His badge snapped off, skidded across the floor, and stopped beside the broken puppet head. Nobody laughed this time. Claire looked at Derek, then at me, and asked quietly enough that only I heard, "What are you?" I did not answer. The camp had stopped laughing. Serena had lost negotiation control. Marcus's quiet file had turned into national visibility. Every adult who tried to measure me found a broken tool in their hand. I had learned that envy was cheaper than food. The damage supervisor filed a report before medical finished checking his wrist. I saw the note on the tablet when a staff member hurried past. The assessment equipment damage had my name beside it, and someone had already added a priority review. That was how fast a broken puppet became a file with my name on it. Claire offered elite coaching that evening. So did 2 other staff members who suddenly remembered my name. Derek was carried to medical with his pride moving slower than his body. Miles and Kira watched me like my white point card might bite them. I listened to the offers, ate 3 trays from the camp cafeteria, and asked where the dorms were. Claire folded her arms. "You're walking away from priority instruction?" "No," I said. "I'm going to train. The dorm is for rest." "Not for me." I went to my assigned room, put the white point card on the desk, and fell asleep in front of a camp that had just decided I was either a fraud, a monster, or both. Derek trained like a man possessed after that. I stayed in my dorm for weeks. Derek Stone trained like a man possessed after I put him in the wall. I knew because the camp would not shut up about it. Every morning, while I was asleep in my dorm, the candidates crowded around the gravity record board and watched Derek add another decimal to his name. Every afternoon, Miles Keene posted clips on StarWeb of Derek punching until his knuckles split. Every night, Kira Lang walked past my door loudly enough for the whole hall to hear her say, "Some people earned a white card and then died under a blanket." That was the funny part. They thought the dorm was where I stopped training. For me, the dorm was where training got teeth. The first week, I woke under a red-black sky and killed corpses in the ruins until the star body method stopped tearing at my ribs. The second week, Nova dropped me into collapsed stairwells where dead things attacked from angles no present-day instructor had taught. The third week, I found a broken transit tunnel full of ash and learned natural breath while running from a corpse with 3 arms and no fear. When I woke up, empty trays sat outside my door. My white point card blinked with unused balance. My sheets smelled like sweat, metal, and future dust. Camp staff opened the door twice to make sure I was alive. The second time, Claire Donovan stood behind them. She looked at the trays, then at me sitting on the floor with my back against the bed frame and one hand still twitching from Sunbreaker fist practice. Claire said, "The gravity chamber opens priority slots at dawn. Stone has been waiting for you to show your face." I reached for a tray. "Tell him to keep waiting. He thinks you are scared." "Good. That gives him a hobby." Claire stepped into the room. The staff behind her tried not to stare at the white point card on my desk. She did not touch it. "Caleb Mercer," Claire said. "Eastern Defense Command does not give priority files to students who sleep through camp." "Then take it back." Her eyes narrowed. "You would give up 1,000 points?" "No," I said. "I would make them feel bad for trying." That was the first time Claire almost smiled at me. "Almost." She pointed toward the door. "Tomorrow, gravity chamber. If you do not appear, I drag you out myself." That sounds like a lot of paperwork. I do not need paperwork to drag a student. That night, hunger dragged me out of the dorm before dawn could. The cafeteria had gone quiet by then, but the camp had not. Derek was at the back table with Miles and Kira, his forearms wrapped, his training shirt dark with sweat. The moment I walked in, half the late-night candidates looked from him to me like they had paid admission. Derek stood before I reached the food line. He tossed a small stack of point receipts onto the table. 400 points earned this week, he said. Real points, from real training. How many did you earn under your pillow? Depends, I said. Do nightmares bill separately? Miles laughed once, then stopped when Derek did not. Derek stepped close enough for the cafeteria cameras to catch both of us. Put the white card up. Tomorrow, if you fail to beat one record, you transfer the balance to the candidates who actually used camp. Kira's eyebrows rose. That was not just trash talk. That was a public bet with a clean prediction attached. Either the sleeping fraud lost his miracle card, or every hour Derek had bled for became a joke. Claire's warning about visibility came back to me. So did Serena's bill. I picked up a tray. No. Derek smiled like he had won. Scared. Hungry, I said. Different emergency. The candidates laughed because they thought I had dodged him. I filled one tray, then a second, then a third. The cashier looked at my white point card and approved all of it. That little beep hit Derek worse than a slap. His 400 points had come from a week of pain. Mine was still feeding me while I slept. Derek's smile cracked. I set the trays on the table beside his receipts. Tomorrow, if the board does not change, you can have the balance. The cafeteria went still. Derek said, and if it does? I took his point receipts, stacked them neatly, and slid them back with one finger. Then keep these. You will need proof you were busy. Kira covered her mouth. Miles looked away. Derek's face went flat. That tiny cafeteria bet was useful. It made the next day simple for everyone watching. The question was not whether I had improved. The question was whether a month of sleep could make Derek's whole month of suffering look like warm-up. The next morning, I appeared with a breakfast tray in one hand and my white point card in the other. The camp followed me like a funeral procession for Derek's confidence. Derek was already in front of the gravity chamber. His face looked leaner than before, his chest bruise was gone, and his badge had been replaced with a new one. He had earned attention the painful way. I respected that much. Then he opened his mouth. Finally awake? Derek asked loud enough for the candidates, staff, and cameras to hear. I was starting to think the wall hit you harder than I did. Miles laughed. Kira folded her arms. The crowd shifted toward the board. Derek pointed at his name on the gravity record list. 8.2, third highest in camp history. I passed your fake lead yesterday. I looked at the board. Then I looked at Claire. That number matters? Derek's smile went stiff. Claire said, it matters if you can survive it. Then start me at 8.3. The chamber operator nearly dropped his tablet. That is not how progression works. I slid the white point card across the counter. It is how spending works. Derek stepped closer. You will crawl out in 30 seconds. Maybe, I said, but if I do, you can have the tray. He looked at the breakfast in my hand like it offended him more than the insult. The chamber door opened, pressure rolled out, heavy and dry. Inside, the floor panels hummed under reinforced glass. The record board above the entrance showed Derek's name glowing in third place. I walked in eating the last piece of toast. At 8.3, my knees bent. The crowd outside pressed closer. At 9, the air thickened until even breathing wanted permission. Star body method tightened through my bones. Natural breath stole room from the pressure and fed it back into my muscles. At 10, the chamber alarm began to chirp. The operator shouted, Caleb, stop moving! Hold position for record confirmation. I looked through the glass at Derek. He was not smiling anymore. So I moved. One step, then another, then a third. The pressure tried to drive me into the floor. I let it. My foot sank hard enough to dent the panel. The chamber registered movement under tenfold gravity, and the record board outside erased Derek's name from the top line like it had been embarrassed to hold it. A new name appeared. Caleb Mercer, 10.0. The crowd made noise then, but the board did more damage than applause ever could. The machine did not care about rumors, favoritism, or who had trained until midnight. It only knew who was still standing. I turned toward the door. Derek's mouth moved, but I could not hear him through the glass. Claire could. She looked at him and said, he asked if you were done. I shook my head. The operator went pale. You cannot increase while inside. Then open the next room, I said. The gravity chamber paid me 1,100 points when I stepped out. Derek had spent weeks trying to climb toward me. My warm-up had stepped over him and billed the camp for the privilege. Miles recovered first because pride is stupid and contagious. Strength is one thing, Miles said, loud enough to rescue himself from Derek's silence. Movement under pressure is different. The footwork lane is where people actually get exposed. I turned to him. Are you volunteering to watch? Kira said. Everyone is watching. That was true. The camp had stopped pretending this was one student's score. Staff moved between stations. Cameras shifted. Claire walked beside me toward the footwork lane with her arms folded and her expression locked down. The footwork lane was a long glass corridor filled with moving light lines. Touch a line, and the system cut your score. Lose rhythm and pressure plates punished your legs. It was built to embarrass people who thought power and speed were the same thing. Miles stood by the viewing rail. Record is clear. Stage 7. Nobody has touched 8. Nobody, I repeated. He flushed. You know what I mean. I did. I entered the lane. The first lines came slow. Present day slow. School practice slow. I moved through them with the corpse memories guiding my hips and crystal mind method opening a thin, cold awareness behind my eyes. Stage 3 became Stage 5. The candidates went quiet. Stage 7 filled the corridor with crossing beams and shifting pressure plates. I stepped where the ground would be safe before the ground admitted it. My body knew danger, half a breath before the machine released it. Stage 8, unlocked. Miles gripped the rail. The lane was not designed for Stage 8. The glass vibrated. The light lines split into patterns that should have trapped both feet at once. I saw them as gaps, not because I was smarter than the machine, because the future had already tried to kill me with worse timing. I crossed Stage 8 without touching a line. The viewing glass cracked from the pressure wave when I stopped. The board added another record under my name and paid 1,400 points. Miles turned away before anyone could look at his face too long. Kira stared at the cracked glass like it might explain me if she hated it hard enough. Claire did not stare at the board. She stared at my hand. A faint shimmer crawled around my fingers, too thin for most candidates to notice. Claire noticed. Of course she noticed. Her entire body changed by half an inch. Not fear. Readiness, she said. Spirit chamber, now. Derek lifted his head. He just finished 2 record attempts. Claire looked at him. That is why I said now. That one line did more than defend me. Claire's eyes moved from my legs to my hand, then to the spirit chamber door. The camp had stopped asking how hard I could hit. The spirit chamber was smaller than the others and much colder. A clear spirit crystal hovered over a dark stand in the center. Beside it, the spirit index display waited at 0. Claire shut the door behind us but left the viewing window open. The whole camp could see. That was not an accident. She stood across from me and said, "Touch the crystal. Do not push. Do not perform. Do not try to be clever. You say that like clever students hurt your equipment. You hurt equipment by breathing near it. Touch the crystal." I did. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the crystal mind method opened on its own. The spirit crystal filled with white light. The spirit index jumped past student range, past candidate range, past the part of the scale that had labels. The crystal rang like a glass bell. Claire's hand snapped toward the emergency control, but the display had already gone wild. A hairline crack split through the crystal. Outside the room, the crowd stopped being a crowd and became one held breath. Claire pulled my hand away. The light stayed inside the crystal for 3 more seconds before it died. The operator outside whispered, "That scale was calibrated for officers." Claire heard him. "So did I." She did not correct him. Instead, Claire opened a camp priority file on her tablet, deleted 3 old notes, and typed 1 new line while standing in front of everyone. Official file unreliable. Manual review required. Then she added the final point award. 4,300. The number appeared beside my name on the camp board, higher than the next 3 candidates combined. A staff member near the console started to clap, then stopped because Claire had not moved. Another staff member opened the resource menu and whispered, "He can buy the officer rooms now." Claire shut the menu with 1 tap. "No public room assignment," she said. "No open challenge lane. No outsider access to his schedule. From this minute on, every request involving Caleb Mercer goes through me." That changed the silence. Records were public bragging rights. Priority control was different. It meant the camp was no longer asking whether I belonged among candidates. It was deciding how to keep other hands off me. Derek heard it. So did Miles and Kira. The white card in my pocket suddenly felt less like a reward and more like a collar someone had not learned how to hold. Derek looked at it, then at me. The thing in his face was no longer simple hatred. It was the expression of someone who had spent weeks chasing a door and then watched it become a wall. They had counted my sleep like absence. I counted it like debt. That should have been the end of the day's humiliation. My phone rang before the camp finished deciding whether to cheer or pray. The screen showed Riley Brooks. I had not formally joined Hawthorne Combat Academy. I had only trained there a few times when Brookhaven 3rd High's equipment was too crowded and Warren Brooks let me use old bags in exchange for cleaning mats. That was before Starweb turned my name into a county argument, I answered. Riley's voice came through broken by shouting, "Caleb, please tell me you are near Brookhaven." Claire looked up from the priority file. I asked Riley, "Who is there?" A crash hit the phone. Riley swallowed hard enough for me to hear it. "Warren is down. The Hawthorne Combat Academy signboard is on the floor. The man said if your white card hero name is real, you should come pick it up." The camp board still had my name glowing at the top. The camp had just learned that sleeping was not my absence, it was the part they could not supervise. Somewhere across Brookhaven County, a smaller board with a weaker name had fallen because of it. Claire said, "Caleb, leaving camp now complicates your priority status." I put the phone in my pocket. "Then keep the file warm," I told her. Riley screamed once before the call cut. I reached Hawthorne Combat Academy before the dust under the signboard settled. That was not a figure of speech. The old wooden sign that used to hang over the front entrance was lying across the training floor, split through the painted letters. One cracked half still carried the first word of the academy's name. The other half had been stepped on until the rest looked like a joke. Warren Brooks was on one knee beside the weapons rack, blood running from his mouth onto his gray shirt. Riley Brooks stood in front of him with a practice staff held in both hands, trying to look wider than she was. The man across from her wore a polished instructor jacket that did not belong to the academy. Thomas Keller. I had seen his name on local Brookhaven Martial Authority boards, always beside photos where he smiled like he had personally invented discipline. He was older than me, broader than me, and standing with one boot on the broken signboard like he wanted the whole room to understand who had lowered whose name. Riley saw me at the door and her grip shook. Thomas saw it too. He turned slowly, looked me up and down, and smiled. "Caleb Mercer. Good. I was hoping the white card rumor had legs." Warren coughed. "Caleb, stay back!" That made Thomas laugh. "Still teaching children to hide behind bad judgment, Warren?" Thomas asked. Then he looked at me again. "Listen carefully, kid. Brookhaven is crowded with fake heroes this month. If you kneel, apologize for dragging this academy into your publicity stunt, and sign under my gym, I might teach you how to survive being famous." Riley snapped. "You came here because he refused your challenge. Do not pretend this is instruction." Thomas lifted one hand toward her. I crossed the room before the hand moved another inch. Thomas's smile widened. "Fast. Good. Your footwork is better than your manners." "Move your boot," I said. He glanced down at the signboard. "Or what? Or you become the weight holding it flat." The room heard that. Two of Thomas's students shifted near the wall. Riley stopped shaking. Warren tried to stand and failed, which answered the last question I had about whether this needed mercy. Thomas struck first. He was not bad. That made it more annoying. His palm came in clean, layered with enough force to break ribs without leaving ugly bruises. A good local instructor's attack, fast enough to scare students, polished enough to sell memberships. I caught his wrist. The smile left his face one finger at a time. Thomas tried to twist out. I let him feel the mistake. His knees bent before his pride did, so I helped both along. I turned his arm, stepped behind him, and drove him down onto the broken academy signboard. The wood cracked under his chest. He gasped. I put one foot on his back, exactly where his boot had been. "There," I said. "Better branding." Riley made a sound that was half laugh and half sob. Thomas's students stared at their own shoes. One of them opened his mouth, saw my foot still on Thomas, and decided his education was complete. The other one made the worst choice. He grabbed a training spear from the wall and rushed my blind side. Riley shouted a warning. Warren tried to move. Thomas, still pinned under the sign, smiled with blood on his teeth, because even fake authority likes a cheap second chance. I did not turn around. The captured spear point stopped against my shoulder and bent. The student's arms shook. His face emptied. I reached back, took the spear from him, snapped the shaft over one knee, and dropped both pieces beside Thomas's head. "Anyone else want to help your instructor lose more equipment?" I asked. Nobody did. Every student in the room saw it. The people who had stepped on Hawthorne Combat Academy's name no longer had the right to stand above it. I looked at Warren. "How bad?" Warren wiped blood from his mouth. "Pride hurts worse than the ribs." "Good. Pride is cheaper." Thomas wheezed from under the signboard. "You cannot do this to me." I leaned down enough for him to hear me clearly. "You came to a half-broken academy, hit an injured man, cornered his daughter, and stepped on his name because you thought mine was fake. I can do much worse." He stopped talking. Riley's laugh broke first. Warren's breath steadied after it. The academy had its floor back. It should have ended with bandages. Instead, Warren pushed away Riley's help, limped to a locked drawer, and pulled out a dull silver chunk wrapped in cloth. Raw mithril. Even before he said the word, the star body method reacted in my bones. Not hunger this time, recognition. The future weapon designs Nova had shown me had all failed on one thing. Present materials were trash. Mithril was not trash. Warren placed the chunk in my palm. "You were too strong for practice steel. Nolan Park sent this months ago," said Black Ridge Mountain still had a seam. "I was saving it for a student who could afford the trip." Riley looked at the signboard under Thomas. "He can afford enemies now. Same thing," I said. Warren's mouth twitched, then tightened from pain. Pine Hollow is not safe. Victor Crane has been leaning on the mining families. Spirit thread user, not local trouble, real trouble. The word spirit thread pulled at the memory of Claire's cracked crystal. Process could have waited. A map, a travel plan, a polite request to Nolan Park. Normal people would have made calls. I looked at Riley's bruised hands, Warren's split signboard, and Thomas Keller trying not to breathe too loudly beneath my foot. Normal people had let the sign fall. I took the mithril sample and called Claire Donovan. She answered with wind in the background. "Tell me you are not still at the academy. I'm going to Blackridge Mountain." There was a short silence. Then Claire said, "Of course you are." She did not ask why. That was why I liked her more than was convenient. The trip to Pine Hollow did not become a travel story because trouble met us at the road. Tessa Monroe and Lena Ortiz were already there when I arrived. Claire had sent them ahead with camp access badges and the kind of confidence that rich families mistake for armor. Tessa waved when she saw me. Lena looked at my plain jacket, the food bag in my hand, and the raw mithril wrapped under my arm. Lena said, "You look less like a military priority and more like a cute tourist who stole a rock." Tessa elbowed her. "Be nice, he might be terrifying." "Might be," Lena said. I looked past them. Pine Hollow's main street was empty in the wrong way. Curtains moved, doors were shut. A toy wagon sat on its side near a porch, one wheel still spinning. A girl's voice cried out behind the old ore shed. Tessa stopped smiling. "We ran!" Nolan Park stood in front of the ore shed with blood on his forehead and one arm wrapped around Grace Park. Grace was trying to reach Ellie Park, but invisible lines held her back. Ellie was maybe 8, maybe 9, standing perfectly still in the dirt with thin silver threads wrapped around her wrists and throat. Behind her, Victor Crane held one finger up like he was conducting music only he could hear. The threads came from that finger. They ran through the street, over rooftops, around fence posts, and through people's sleeves. Men and women stood frozen along the walls, each one caught by a strand. One wrong movement and half the village would bleed. Victor looked disappointed when he saw me. "Another courier?" he asked. "Nolan, you are wasting my patience. I asked for the seam rights, not children with badges." Nolan forced the words through his teeth. "Caleb, don't move," Victor smiled. "Caleb, the sleeping boy from Starweb?" He flicked one finger before I answered. A thread snapped across the road and sliced a porch post cleanly in half. The top piece slid down with a soft wooden cough. Nobody in Pine Hollow moved after that. Even Tessa and Lena stopped breathing loudly. Victor enjoyed that part. I could see it in his face. He did not need private thoughts narrated for him. He liked making adults stand still while a child paid the interest on their fear. "The seam rights are simple," Victor told Nolan. "Sign them over and your daughter keeps her head attached. Refuse, and I send half this street to the ground before your grief gets poetic." Grace tried to step forward. The thread around Ellie's throat brightened. Nolan caught Grace by the arm with a sound that hurt worse than shouting. Lena whispered, "Oh!" Tessa whispered back. "That is usually where people should stop talking." Victor did not stop. He tugged one finger. Ellie's chin lifted as the thread at her throat tightened. Grace screamed Ellie's name. Victor said to me, "The child is useful. Children make adults honest. Take one step and I turn honesty into a funeral." I did not like the way he said the child was useful. My hand opened. Crystal mind methods spread through the street like cold water. The threads were not invisible anymore. They glimmered as pressure lines, each one humming with Victor's spirit. His web had turned the whole street into prey. That was his mistake. He had made a web. Webs had edges. I took one step. Victor's finger snapped down. The thread at Ellie's throat tightened, but it did not cut. It could not. I had caught it between two fingers. Victor's smile died. The whole village saw it. He jerked his hand, trying to pull the thread free. The line sliced into my skin and sparked against the star body method instead of cutting through. I wrapped the thread around my wrist and pulled. Victor slid one foot across the dirt. His eyes widened. I pulled again. This time, he flew. He crossed the yard face first, hit the ore shed wall, bounced off, and dropped in front of me. The web around Pine Hollow sagged. People stumbled free. Grace ran to Ellie and caught her before her knees folded. Victor tried to raise his hand. I stepped on it. His fingers cracked under my shoe. He screamed. I crouched beside him and unwound the spirit thread from his broken control ring. It shivered like a living wire in my palm. "Thank you," I said. Victor spat blood. "That belongs to me. You used it on a child. Now it belongs to evidence, loot, or my trash pile. I have not decided." He tried to curse me. I pressed down until the curse became a whimper. Abram Shaw came out of the ore office after the last thread fell. He was older, broad-shouldered, and carrying a miner's hammer like he had wanted to fight for an hour and been forced to wait. His eyes moved from Ellie and Grace's arms to Victor under my shoe. Then Abram lowered his head to me. "Blackridge owes you," he said. Nolan lowered his head too, and that did something different to the village than Victor's web had. Fear had made them still. Debt made them move. Doors opened. People started helping the bound neighbors. Someone dragged Victor's broken control ring out of the dirt. Grace kept crying into Ellie's hair. Tessa and Lena stood near the fence, no longer treating me like a cute tourist with a stolen rock. Lena looked at the captured spirit thread in my hand and said, "I take back the tourist part." "Keep the cute part," I said. It sounded expensive. Tessa choked on a laugh at the worst possible time. Abram did not laugh. He went into the ore office, came back with a sealed metal case and opened it in front of me. Inside lay raw mithril pieces brighter than Warren's sample. The star body method pulsed once. The future weapon cards in my memory reacted like hungry dogs smelling meat. Nolan saw my hand tighten around the case. "You can break steel just by using it," he said. "Mithril will not make you gentle, but it might stop your weapons from dying embarrassed." "I need enough for a spear," I said. Tessa looked at me. "A spear? Something with reach. People keep making me walk over to punish them." Even Grace laughed once through tears. Ellie heard it and looked up from her mother's shoulder. The sound did not fix what Victor had done, but it told the street the child was alive enough to hear jokes again. "That was worth more than ore. Nolan can help you shape it," Abram said. "I can keep the scene quiet until your people arrive." "My people?" The answer came from above us. A helicopter cut over the ridge, black and heavy, with Eastern Defense Command markings visible on the side. Dust jumped across the road. The villagers looked up. Tessa shaded her eyes. Lena's mouth stayed half open. A rich visitor near the parked trucks had been watching the whole thing from a safe distance. He had mocked my jacket when I arrived and offered to call me a taxi if the mountain air scared me. Now the downdraft shoved dust across his polished shoes, while an Eastern Defense Command helicopter lowered itself into the field. Claire Donovan leaned from the open side door. She looked at Victor Crane on the ground, Ellie safe in Grace's arms, the mithril case in Abram's hands, and the spirit thread wrapped around my wrist. "I leave you alone for one rescue," Claire shouted over the rotors, "and you start collecting villains as equipment." I lifted the thread. Efficient trip. The rich visitor slowly put his wallet away. Tessa looked from the helicopter to the wallet and whispered, "That is the loudest no I have ever seen." Lena did not argue this time. The wallet disappeared. So did the taxi joke. The helicopter skids had not touched grass yet, and money had already lost the argument. Claire threw down a headset. "Get in. The Morning Star Final Beast is awake early, and Eastern Defense Command wants you in the field before it eats the candidates who showed up on time." The mithril case went into my hand. The spirit thread stayed around my wrist. Ellie waved at me from Grace's arms, still crying but alive. I boarded the helicopter with village dust on my shoes and Victor's weapon in my pocket. The last thing I saw before the door shut was the rich visitor staring at the sky like he had just learned the price difference between a cab and a war machine. Claire Donovan did not take me back to camp. The helicopter cut past the dorm towers, crossed 3 fenced training fields, and dropped toward the Morning Star selection field while my headset still smelled like pine hollow dust. Below us, candidates were already running, not warming up. Running. The central arena sat inside a ring of concrete bunkers and broken terrain, with beast lanes spreading out from it like spokes. Smoke rose from one lane, a siren flashed over another. On the far side, a reinforced gate shook hard enough that every camera tower pointed toward it. Claire spoke into my headset. "The final beast woke early. Eastern Defense Command is moving the schedule." "Moving it where?" "Toward disaster, if the candidates keep pretending they are ready." That was her polite version. When the helicopter door opened, I heard the real version from the field. Conrad Pike was arguing near the command rail with 2 officers and smiling like he had found a profitable fire. He wore his candidate badge high, his gloves spotless, and his confidence louder than the sirens. Conrad pointed at the beast lanes and said, "We'll wager my remaining points that the Brookhaven sleeper fails before Ashton Voss clears lane 3. Hype does not survive pressure." Ashton Voss stood near the starting line with both hands in his pockets. Heat shimmered around his sleeves whenever his fingers moved. He had hidden that flame talent through the early camp rounds, which meant he was either strategic or annoying. Then he saw me step down from the helicopter with mithril dust on my shoes and Victor Crane's spirit thread wrapped around my wrist. Ashton chose annoying. "Brookhaven really sends anything now," he said. "A napper with a souvenir string." Claire stepped down behind me. "Ashton, focus on your lane." Conrad laughed. "Let him talk. If Mercer is real, words will not hurt him. If he is fake, the beast will save us time." I looked at the shaken gate in the center arena. Something hit it from the other side. The bunker wall cracked. "What is in there?" I asked. Claire's voice dropped. "Gold-eyed war ape. Tier 6 body, unstable rift mutation, and enough hate to treat teams like snacks." The final stage was built for coordinated squads. Nobody was supposed to see it alone. "Then why is everyone outside the gate?" "Because it broke chain 1. The gate shook again. How many chains? Claire looked at me. The third chain snapped before she answered. The Morningstar field stopped asking whether candidates could look impressive in separate lanes. Conrad's wager, Ashton's hidden flame, every clean little score on the board, all of it shrank behind one question. Could anyone stand in front of the thing all those tests were meant to delay? I put the mithril case by Claire's feet and stepped toward the starting line. She caught my arm. Caleb, clear the lanes first. The field needs a valid entry path before the command staff can count the result. One clear threshold, I said. Break it. Get paid. Claire released my arm like she hated that I understood the stupid part. The horn sounded. Ashton shot forward in a burst of flame and dust. Conrad took the opposite lane with 2 support candidates behind him. The rest scattered across the field like the trial still had a normal shape. I entered lane 1. The first rift beast came out of a trench, all plates and teeth. I did not slow down. Sunbreaker Fist hit its skull and folded it into the dirt. The second beast jumped from a wall. I caught its leg, used it as a club against the third, and threw both over the boundary sensor. The lane counter flashed green before the nearest camera finished turning. A voice from the command rail shouted, "Lane 1 cleared!" Already? I crossed into lane 2 without waiting for approval. That one had smoke, broken pipes, and 2 beasts hunting from opposite sides. Better. They tried to split my attention. Crystal Mind Method widened the space behind my eyes. One beast breathed before attacking. The other twitched its shoulder. I moved between those tails and let them collide. Then I broke the one still moving. Lane 2 turned green. Ashton had reached lane 3 by then, flame pouring around his hands. He burned one beast clean through and looked toward the camera tower like he expected applause. The central gate exploded outward. The gold-eyed war ape came through with half a chain still locked around its throat. It was bigger than the bunker door, covered in dark hide and old scars, with eyes bright enough to look almost intelligent. It grabbed the broken gate, tore it free, and threw it into lane 3. Ashton saw it late. His flames rose, too wide and too pretty. The gate piece smashed through the fire and would have turned him into paste if I had not reached him first. I caught the edge with both hands. The impact drove my heels 6 inches into the dirt. Ashton fell backward, staring at me from the ground. I looked down at him. "Your fire is loud. Your feet are lazy." His mouth opened. The war ape roared before he could save his pride. It charged. The field finally understood the trial had changed. Candidates ran away from lanes they had spent months begging to enter. Officers shouted for formation. The command rail lit up with emergency warnings. Conrad Pike's support candidates abandoned his side, and Conrad stopped looking profitable. The war ape's fist came down where Ashton had been. I met it head on. My first punch cracked 2 knuckles and taught me the ape was not a class rival, a puppet, or a local spirit bully. It was heavy in the way the future was heavy. It did not care about audience, points, or my name. Good. I needed something that did not care. The ape swung again. I ducked under the arm, wrapped Victor Crane's spirit thread around the broken chain at its throat, and pulled sideways. The thread screamed against the chain. The ape stumbled 1 step. 1 step was enough. I drove Sunbreaker Fist into its ribs. Heat burst through the impact. The ape roared, grabbed the thread, and yanked me off my feet. For 1 second I saw the sky, the command tower, Claire at the rail, and Ashton's pale face all turning above me. Then I hit the ape's wrist with my heel and broke its grip. I landed on its forearm, ran up the muscle, and punched its eye. The gold light went out on one side. The ape slammed itself into the ground trying to crush me. I rolled under the fall, caught the spirit thread again, and pulled with Starbody Method until my shoulders felt like they were trying to leave my body. The chain around its throat snapped tight. The ape dropped to one knee. Nova's future Quark's memories gave me the angle. Not mercy, not technique poetry. Angle. I stepped in and hit the base of its skull. The gold-eyed war ape hit the arena floor and did not get back up. The corpse shook the field when it fell. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then every board around the arena flashed the same word. Cleared. Conrad Pike's wager died on the screen before his mouth could explain it. Claire reached me first. "Are you injured?" "Yes." Her face tightened. I lifted my cracked knuckles. "Hungry too. The injury is less urgent." She closed her eyes for half a second. "You soloed the final beast and your first complaint is booed. Second complaint. The beast damaged my thread." Ashton, still on the ground, looked from the ape corpse to me. The flame around his sleeves had gone out. He did not thank me. Pride made him slow. I helped him by speaking first. "You owe me a gate," he swallowed. "You saved my life. That too." The gate was heavier. Conrad walked over with his jaw clenched. His candidate badge was dusty now. That helped his face. He said, "The trial still has active candidates. You cleared one path and got lucky with the beast." Claire's head turned toward him like a blade. I raised one hand before she could speak. Conrad looked like he needed the field to make sense again. He needed a rule that put me beside him instead of above him. Rules are comfortable when they still have room for your ego. So, I gave him a new one. I walked back into the central arena and stood beside the war ape corpse. The loudspeakers crackled. A deeper voice came over the field. "Mercer, exit the arena for medical confirmation." General Arthur Rourke stood behind the command glass, broad, gray-haired and smiling like someone had just watched a budget problem turn into a weapon. I looked up at him. "The final beast is dead. The trial still needs a final obstacle, right?" Claire said. "Caleb." Arthur Rourke laughed into the microphone. That laugh rolled over the whole field. "Let him stand," the general said. "Any candidate who wants Morningstar status may attempt to move Caleb Mercer from the center ring. Lasting 30 seconds counts as survival. Landing a clean hit counts as excellence. Making him step out counts as a miracle." Conrad's face changed. He had asked for a rule. He got one. It just hated him. The first candidate rushed me and lasted 8 seconds. I tapped his shoulder, took his balance, and put him outside the ring without breaking anything important. The second came with a shield. I let him hide behind it until he believed in it, then punched the shield flat and carried him out with it. Ashton entered third. His flames came back sharper, less pretty, and pointed at my feet this time. Better. He had learned something while almost dying. I let him circle, let him burn the dirt, and when he tried to blind me with a flare, I stepped through the heat and flicked his forehead. He dropped to one knee. 26 seconds, I said. Not bad. Ashton looked up, breathing hard. That was not 30. Then come back less lazy. He laughed once despite himself and rolled out of the ring. Conrad came last because pride likes an audience more than safety. He carried 2 short blades and a face full of reasons I should respect him. He lasted 12 seconds. At the end, I held both blades in one hand and his candidate badge in the other. I tossed the badge back. "Keep it," I said. "It needs better memories." The field roared then. Not because they loved me, not yet, because every candidate finally understood the trial had stopped measuring us against the beast. It had measured them against me. Morningstar selection ended with my name at the top, a gold-eyed war ape corpse in the center ring, and more candidates passing by surviving me than by clearing their lanes. The scoreboards tried to divide the result into neat categories: beast clearance, emergency response, candidate resistance, final ring control. Then the system gave up and placed one line under my name. Manual authority review required. I was starting to hate that phrase. It always meant someone important had run out of boxes and wanted to build a cage that fit better. General Arthur Rourke met me at the edge of the field with Claire beside him. The general handed me a Morningstar badge himself. It was heavier than the white point card and much uglier. Military objects liked being ugly. It made them feel honest, Arthur said. "Caleb Mercer, Eastern Defense Command is about to spend an obscene amount of money on your body. Tell me now if you are fragile." "I'm expensive," I said. "Different problem." The general grinned. "Good, I hate fragile investments." That was how I met the Black Marrow pool. It sat under the base in a sealed chamber behind 3 blast doors. Black liquid filled a circular pool wide enough to drown a truck. The air above it pressed against my skin before I stepped inside. Star body method woke up so violently my bones hurt. Claire stood by the control rail. Her voice was quieter than usual. "This pool is built from Rift Beast marrow, otherworld blood, and reserve materials. Eastern Defense Command does not admit exist in public budgets. You get 1 hour, absorb what you can, then you get out." Arthur folded his arms. "The counted resource value is $150 billion. Do not make me explain that number to finance." I looked at the pool. The pool looked back in the way dangerous resources do. "No promises," I said. Claire muttered. "I knew you would say that." I stepped in. Pain hit first. The Black Marrow pool did not feed me like the Fireseed tonic. It invaded. It poured through skin, bone, scars, and every weak place the future had found in me. Star body method clenched around it. Natural breath slowed my panic. Crystal mind method kept the pain from becoming noise. The liquid level dropped. At first, the staff thought the gauge was wrong. Then, it dropped again. Arthur stopped smiling. Claire's hand tightened on the rail. The pool boiled around my waist, then my ribs, then my chest. Black heat hammered into the frame of my body. The gold spark that had been waiting under Starbody method finally caught and spread through my bones like molten light. Immortal gold body did not complete there. Not yet. But it woke up. When I stepped out, the pool behind me had fallen so low that one technician whispered a number and another told him to shut up. Arthur looked at the gauges, then at me. 150 billion, he said slowly. Gone. I wiped black liquid from my arm. You said absorb what I could. Claire stared at the emptying pool. Most people could absorb a cup. That sounds inefficient. Arthur laughed again, but this time there was danger in it. He walked into the testing circle beside the pool chamber and rolled one shoulder. "Stand there," he said. Claire stepped forward. "General." Arthur did not look away from me. "If Eastern Defense Command just poured a National Reserve into a student, I need to know whether we made a morning star or a walking disaster." I stepped into the circle. Arthur hit me. There was no dramatic wind-up, no speech. His palm crossed the space and landed on my chest with enough force to turn the floor sensors red. I slid back 3 feet. I did not fall. My ribs complained. My lungs forgot their job for a second. The gold spark in my bones answered the strike by burning hotter. Arthur's eyebrows rose. I took one breath, then another. "Was that the test?" I asked, "or the invoice?" Claire made a strangled sound that might have been anger and might have been relief. Arthur looked at his hand, then at me, and laughed so hard the technicians stopped pretending not to stare. "Claire," he said, "your district just became very valuable." Claire did not look happy about that. That mattered. Value brought protection. It also brought owners. General Rourke handed me a clean towel, a sealed file, and a new problem before the pool chamber doors finished opening. "You are Morningstar now," he said. "You are also a resource sink with no public category and a national exam coming. Before the National Marshal exam makes you everyone's argument, you will certify through the proper channels: spirit, body, combat, all of it." "More machines?" I asked. Arthur smiled. "Yes." I looked back at the drained black marrow pool, the cracked floor sensors, and Claire Donovan watching me like I had become both a weapon and her paperwork nightmare. "They keep breaking," I said. Arthur slapped the file against my chest. "Then, try not to look surprised when the country notices." I left the base with the Morningstar badge in my pocket, a new body under my skin, a bigger bill behind me, and one order waiting ahead. Certify before the exam. General Arthur Rourke gave me one order after the black marrow pool drained into my bones. Certify before the National Marshal exam. That sounded clean until Claire Donovan drove me to the Spirit Association and I saw the testing hall full of people pretending not to stare at the Morning Star badge clipped inside my jacket. The Spirit Association did not look like a battlefield. It looked worse. Clean floors, quiet staff, polished machines, and adults who believed every dangerous thing could be placed behind a desk, if the desk was expensive enough. Howard Larkin ran the hall from a glass office above the floor. He was thin, silver-haired, and calm in the way only powerful people with insurance felt calm. Claire signed one line at the front counter and said to him, "Eastern Defense Command needs a Spirit certificate today. National Marshal exam compatibility. No delays." Howard looked down at the file, then at me. "Morningstar, Brookhaven County. Age confirmed. Spirit abnormality flagged. That is a very loud file for a very young student." I said. "The machines started it." Claire did not smile. Howard did, which made me like him less. "We will begin with basic control. No need for theatrics." That was the first mistake. The second mistake was putting Jenna Lowell ahead of me. Jenna stood in the control circle with 6 white testing balls floating around her. She was talented enough to be angry at herself and disciplined enough not to scream. Every time she tried to guide the balls into formation, 2 shook loose and 1 dropped. The examiner outside the circle tapped his tablet. "Again!" Jenna's jaw tightened. "I know." Camille Hart, standing near the spectator rail with Tessa Monroe, lifted her voice just enough to cut. "Maybe the association should not certify people based on family introductions." Tessa turned on her. "Camille." Camille shrugged. "What? If Jenna cannot keep 6 balls in line, why is everyone whispering about a boy from Brookhaven doing officer-level work? This whole room is turning into charity theater." Jenna heard it. Her next attempt failed faster. I did not know Jenna. I did not need to. I knew what it looked like when a room made your hands heavier. I stepped to the edge of the circle and said, "Stop pushing all 6. Jenna looked at me, still flushed. "Excuse me? Pick one. Make the other 5 copy it." The examiner frowned. "Candidates should not coach each other during active certification." Howard Larkin's voice came from the upper office speaker. "Let him speak. I want to hear what Eastern Defense Command brought me." So I spoke to Jenna, not to the room. "You're treating every ball like it has a different problem. It doesn't. 1 clean center, 5 echoes. If one wobbles, don't chase it. Make the center better." Jenna stared at the balls. Camille muttered, "Very inspiring. Maybe next he can teach gravity to behave." Tessa said, clearly enough for Camille and me to hear, "I watched him catch spirit thread around a child's throat. Let him talk." That shut Camille up for half a second. Jenna lifted one hand. This time, she moved the front ball first. The other 5 trembled, then lined behind it like they were embarrassed to have argued. She turned her wrist. The formation moved. Not perfectly, but clean enough for the testing board to flash green. Jenna let out one hard breath. The examiner blinked at the result. Howard came down from the glass office himself after that. He looked at me over the top of his tablet. You corrected a spirit control error after watching it once. It was visible. To whom? To me. Howard's polite expression thinned. Good. The room had a new question now. Could a teenage Morningstar actually do what his file suggested, or had Eastern Defense Command dragged a physical monster into a spirit hall and called it certification? Howard did not give me the circle right away. He made the room wait. That was not procedure. It was pressure. The examiner reset the balls. Jenna stepped out with her results still blinking green, and for the first time Camille had to stand beside a success she had tried to laugh at. Howard walked around the control circle once, then stopped in front of me. No hand gestures, no spoken count. If you really corrected the center, use the center. Claire said, you are turning certification into a challenge. Howard answered her without looking away from me. Certification is always a challenge. We only call it paperwork when the candidate is boring. That was useful. The whole hall heard the threshold before I crossed it. No one could claim later that I had been handed a soft test. Howard pointed to the control circle. 12-ball practical. You will guide them into any stable formation. Hold 10 seconds. If one touches the floor, you fail this section. Claire said, Howard? He did not look at her. You asked for no delays. I am removing them. I stepped into the circle. 12 white balls rose around me. The testing board lit with conservative numbers, neat categories, and little thresholds that probably made normal candidates sweat. I looked at them once and stopped caring. Crystal mind method opened behind my eyes. The room sharpened. Every testing ball had a tiny resistance inside it. Not personality. Wait! Lag! The machine expected me to command 12 separate objects and prove I could multitask. I made one center. Then I made the room follow it. The 12 balls spun once, slow and clean. Then they rose, stacked, split, and curved into a long white dragon over the testing floor. Its head formed above Howard Larkin. Its tail circled behind me. The spirit index display climbed past the mark threshold, past the red warning band, and stopped only because Claire reached over and killed the output before the glass cracked. The dragon stayed in the air for 10 seconds, then 20. Then I opened my hand and let every ball drop gently back into its cradle. No crash, no broken floor, no excuse. Howard looked at the dead display. That is not a standard formation. You said any stable formation. Jenna Lowell laughed once before she could hide it. Tessa smiled. Camille Hart did not. Howard turned the certificate tablet toward me. The Spirit Association seal glowed beside my name. Under classification, he selected a category, hesitated, then selected the next one higher. Tier 4, Spirit Master. A few people who had been watching me like an imported problem looked back at the glowing seal. A few minutes earlier, I had been a loud file. Now my name had a certificate beside it, and dismissing me required more courage. Howard handed me the Spirit certificate and said, there is a recognition banquet tonight. Normally, I would advise restraint. I took the certificate. Then do the useful thing and don't. The banquet was at Grand Sea Hotel, because apparently expensive rooms followed me whenever people wanted to underestimate me in nicer lighting. Tessa found me near the entrance before the speeches. She wore a formal dress, but she still looked like the girl who had watched Pine Hollow learn the difference between taxi money and a helicopter. You clean up better than village dust, she said. The dust had more honest people. She laughed. Be careful. Camille thinks you were here because I invited you. Did you? No, Howard did. That will annoy her more. Camille arrived with perfect timing and a worse attitude. She looked from Tessa to me, then to the Spirit Association banner hanging behind the stage. Tessa, Camille said, you collect strange charity cases, first mountain stories, now a Brookhaven boy in a borrowed jacket. Tessa's smile vanished. Do not start. Camille did start, because people like that always think the first insult is free. She turned to me. Let me guess, you helped carry someone's bag at Pine Hollow, got a military girl to smile, and now you are trying to climb through banquet photos? I looked at Tessa. Is she always this much work? Camille's face sharpened. Excuse me? I asked the person with useful information. Tessa covered her mouth, but her eyes gave her away. Camille stepped closer. You should be careful where you stand. Rooms like this remember who belongs. Howard Larkin's voice cut through the hall from the stage. Everyone, please take your seats. Tonight, the Spirit Association recognizes a rare certification and an honored guest from Eastern Defense Command. Caleb Mercer, Tier 4, Spirit Master, Morningstar, and the youngest high control candidate this hall has certified this year. Camille froze with her mouth half open. The room turned toward me. Tessa did not gloat. She just looked at Camille until Camille had to look away first. I walked past Camille toward the front. When I reached her shoulder, I said, "Good news." The room remembered. Camille's rules died under Howard's microphone. No duel, no punch. Just a banner, a certificate, and a snob discovering she had insulted the name on the program. Howard tried to introduce me to donors after that. Tessa tried not to laugh when they lined up. Camille stayed near the wall, no longer deciding who belonged anywhere. I stayed long enough to eat, because I was not stupid, then left before the praise turned into questions. The National Martial Exam started the next morning. It did not start as an exam for me. It started as a public argument between official equipment and my body. The first exam station tried to be polite. A clerk read my name, saw Morning Star and Tier 4 Spirit Master stacked beside it, and called for a supervisor before touching the needle case. I said, "Use the normal set first." The clerk looked at Claire. Claire said, "He means it." The normal set mattered because the room heard the baseline before it failed. If the normal needle worked, I was merely unusual. If it bent, the National Martial Exam had to answer its own doubts. The first golden needle bent against my skin. The second bent too. The examiner checked my name, checked the needle case, and looked at Claire like she had brought a dangerous animal into a clinic. Claire said, "Use the reinforced set." The reinforced needle entered just enough for the pulse index machine to scream, flash a number, and shut itself down. A second examiner whispered, "That cannot be right." I said, "It keeps hearing that." They moved me to the strike dummy. This one was not old public equipment. It was National Martial Exam property, polished black, bolted into the floor, and advertised as Tier 5 resistant. The chief examiner said, "Controlled strike, no technique, no spirit, no repeat attempt. One clear threshold. Break it. Get noticed." I hit the dummy with a plain punch. The dummy absorbed the impact for 1 perfect second. Then the backplate split, the floor bolts snapped, and the whole thing slid 6 feet before stopping in front of a row of exam officials. Nobody clapped. That made it better. The officials had to step around their own broken measurement tool to reach me. One of them opened a sealed review tablet. Another called the governor's office. Claire folded her arms beside the ruined dummy, and I knew she was fighting the urge to say she had warned them. One official tried to cover the break by saying the dummy had taken damage earlier. Claire leaned toward him and asked, "Then why did you let national candidates strike damaged equipment?" He stopped talking. Another official brought out the backup plate. "I did not ask for it." He did not ask whether I was ready. He only set it down with both hands and backed away like the plate might accuse him too. I touched it with 2 fingers. The strike index display jumped, froze, and printed a warning strip that said the result required governor-level review. That little strip of paper did more than print a warning. The staff stopped trying to measure me and started trying to decide who had to call upward first. The final result did not arrive as a score. It arrived as a title, Dragon Scholar. By sunset, the convoy reached my street. Not a message. Not an email. A convoy. Frank Mercer was in the front yard with work gloves still on because he thought the first black car belonged to a neighbor with bad parking habits. Linda Mercer came out wiping her hands on a dish towel. Nora stood behind them, pretending not to stare harder than anyone. The neighbor across the street had spent years looking at our old car, our patched porch, and our grocery bags like poverty was contagious. When the first 2 cars stopped, he stepped outside wearing that same thin smile. When the lead car door opened, he recovered enough to whisper to another neighbor, "Maybe it is for the house behind them." Nora heard him. My sister did not raise her voice. She just leaned over the porch rail and said, "If the governor walks through our hedge, I will apologize." Then Governor Patricia Wynne stepped onto our path. Nora looked at the neighbor again and gave the smallest, meanest wave I had ever seen from her. I had one-punched rivals, cracked machines, and drained resources that made generals swear. Somehow, that little wave was one of the most satisfying attacks of the week. The smile died so cleanly I almost thanked her. Patricia Wynne walked up our cracked front path with 2 officials carrying a sealed case. She did not ask whether she had the right house. She looked at Frank and Linda like they were the reason she had come, not decorations behind my title. "Frank Mercer, Linda Mercer," she said. "Your son has received Dragon Scholar recognition from the National Martial Exam. The governor's office is authorized to deliver the reward package directly." Frank stared at her hand until Linda nudged him. He shook it like it might explode. The sealed case opened on our porch. $50 million in reward authorization. A Capital District residence deed. 7 university letters. Nora looked from the deed to me. "You broke a test and they gave you a house?" "Several tests," I said. Linda pressed one hand over her mouth. Frank picked up the deed with both hands. My father held the deed like it might vanish if he breathed too hard. Patricia Wynne noticed. She did not make a speech. The convoy, the case, and the neighbor unable to speak did all the talking. Nora stopped teasing for exactly 12 seconds. Then she looked at the 7 university letters and said, "If you choose the fanciest one, I am telling everyone you finally learned ambition." I sorted through the letters while the street watched. The strongest schools had better banners, better neighborhoods, and louder promises. 7th St. Martial University had the weakest recent reputation and the most useful tower access, so I chose 7th St. Martial University. Nora stared. Of course you picked the weird one. The tower is useful. Normal people pick schools. You pick buildings to rob legally. That is why I am Dragon Scholar. Frank laughed then. Linda cried. Patricia Wynne smiled like she had just watched a public asset choose a problem nobody else wanted. The convoy left before dark. By morning, I reached the 7th St. Martial University dorm blocks with a Dragon Scholar title, a residence deed for my family, and enough official attention to make any sane campus polite. 7th Saint was not sane. At the dorm gate, a freshman flew through the air and hit the pavement in front of me. A senior voice from inside shouted, "Next freshman pays before he sleeps here." The freshman hit the pavement in front of me and rolled until his shoulder bumped my shoe. He was conscious. Angry too. That was good. Anger meant his spine was probably fine. I looked through the 7th St. Martial University dorm gate and saw 6 seniors blocking the entrance like they had been hired by stupidity. The tallest one wore his student card clipped to his jacket and stood with one hand on the gate frame. Brent Hawk. I knew the name because every ugly campus needs one loud person to make orientation honest. The freshman on the ground pushed himself up and winced. "Don't," he said to me. "They are making everyone fight for dorm entry." "Everyone?" "Freshman." "Convenient," I said. "I am one." Brent heard me and smiled. "Another one? Good. Drop your bag, transfer your first month of Otherworld blood allowance, and I will let you crawl in with both knees attached." That explained the gate. Landon held up his own student card with a shaking hand. The corner was cracked from the fall. "They already took half my allowance," he said. "I tried to say no." That made the senior toll booth less funny. Otherworld blood was not pocket money. It was the monthly ration that let poor freshmen keep up with rich ones who arrived with private supply crates. Taking it from Landon did not just bruise him, it stole a month of growth and called it tradition. I looked back at Brent. He must have seen the change in my face because he finally stopped smiling. 7th St. Martial University gave each admitted combat student a student card and a monthly Otherworld blood ration. It was not a luxury, it was fuel. The campus seniors had turned the first resource into a toll booth and called it tradition. I stepped over the fallen freshman and walked to the gate. Brent looked at my plain bag, then at the Dragon Scholar badge I had not bothered to hide. His smile paused, then returned because pride hates changing direction in public. "Dragon Scholar," Brent said loudly for the dorm crowd. "Cute title. Around here, titles from outside don't open doors." I looked at his hand on the frame. "Move." The seniors laughed. Brent leaned closer. "Make me. People should stop saying that to me." I caught his wrist, turned it just enough to ruin his stance, and stepped through the gate while pulling him with me. His feet left the ground. His back hit the stone entry wall. The sound was dull, final, and educational. The other seniors stopped laughing. The freshman behind me whispered, "Oh!" I took Brent's student card from his jacket, scanned it at the gate terminal, and watched the entry lock flash green. Then I put the card back on his chest. "Your door works," I told him. "You were the broken part." The freshman on the ground started laughing even though it hurt him. Brent slid down the wall and tried to stand. I admired the effort. Then he tried to reach for me again, which made admiration expensive. I tapped his shoulder. He sat back down immediately. One senior at the side said, "You cannot just attack upperclassmen." I turned to him. "I can if they are blocking food, beds, or training resources. Which one are you?" He moved away from the gate. The fallen freshman picked up his bag and followed me inside. "Landon Wells," he said quickly, like the name might be useful before something else hit him. "I owe you." "Eat first," I said. "Owing people burns calories." Landon blinked, then laughed again. He had fear in him, but not the rotting kind. The useful kind. The kind that knew when the world had changed and adjusted instead of arguing. The dorm block heard about Brent before I found my room. The cafeteria heard about him before dinner. That caused the next problem, because cafeteria seniors are a special species. They see a hungry freshman with attention and decide the universe has asked them to die over a table. I had 5 trays stacked in front of me when 3 seniors sat down without asking. Landon froze across from me. Around us, other freshmen went quiet. The middle senior pointed at my food. "Dragon Scholar gets a big appetite. Maybe he wants to share with the people who keep this campus orderly." I kept eating. He leaned closer. "I am talking to you." "I know," I said. "That is why I am eating faster." The senior's face tightened. He reached for the nearest tray. I pinned his hand to the table with one finger. Not hard enough to break it, hard enough that everyone saw he could not lift it. He tried with his shoulder, then with both legs under the table. The tray did not move. His face went red. The 2 seniors beside him started to stand. Landon stood too, shaking but standing. That mattered more than the seniors did. I looked at Landon. "Sit, finish your food." He sat because he trusted the order. That was the first useful thing 7th Saint gave me. The senior with the trapped hand hissed, "Let go!" Apologized to the tray. "What? You touched it without permission. The cafeteria went dead silent, then one freshman choked on a laugh. The senior's friends looked at him. His status was bleeding faster than his pride could bandage it. He whispered, "Sorry." To the tray. His eyes burned. "Sorry," he said to my dinner. I released his hand. He stood up so fast his chair fell backward. Then he walked away with his friends, which was the smartest thing any senior did that day. Fear is efficient on a campus full of pride. By the next morning, 7 St. Marshall University had given me 3 things: a room, a resource ration, and a reputation for bullying bullies before they finished the sentence. That should have bought peace. Instead, Vice Principal Jonah Crest summoned all freshmen to the central arena. Jonah Crest was not loud. He did not need to be. He stood on the platform with a student roster in one hand and the tired eyes of a man who had watched too many talented idiots confuse school spirit with attempted murder. He looked at the crowd and said, "The freshman representative will speak. Caleb Mercer, step forward." The arena booed before I moved. Some freshmen hated Brent and the cafeteria seniors. Some hated me for fixing them too publicly. The strongest freshmen hated the idea that a dragon scholar could walk in and become the story before they had a chance to introduce themselves. That was fair. "I took the platform," Jonah Crest said quietly. "Try to calm them down. No promises." He sighed like Claire Donovan had warned him. I faced the freshmen. A voice from the crowd shouted, "We did not come here to kneel to Brookhaven." Another shouted, "Dragon Scholar is an exam title, not campus strength." More voices joined. Not organized, just pride looking for a body. I waited until they were loud enough to feel brave. Then I said, "Good. All of you who think I am in your way, come up together." Jonah Crest closed his eyes. The arena went quiet for half a breath. Then the strongest freshman climbed onto the platform. Landon, sitting near the front, mouthed, "Why?" I gave him the honest answer with a shrug. Because one fight was cheaper than a semester of interruptions. The first freshman rushed with a shield. I took the shield and returned him with it. The second came low. I stepped over him and tapped the back of his head, sending him face first into the mat. 3 tried to surround me. I let them complete the circle, then broke the circle by throwing one into the other 2. The arena noise changed from cheering to counting. 10, 15, 20. By the time the last challenger hit the mat, nobody on the platform was unconscious long enough to count a serious injury, but nobody was standing except me. That was deliberate. I did not need corpses. I needed schedule control. I looked at the freshmen and said, "If you want round 2, sign up after I eat." No one moved. Jonah Crest took the platform back with the expression of a man whose problem had been solved in the worst possible way. "Freshman representative confirmed," he said. The title did not last. By lunch, the campus had a better one. Demon King. I did not choose it. I did not reject it either. Titles are like weapons. If idiots keep handing them over, you might as well check the grip. The next useful door opened because of that title. 7th St. Marshall University kept an old weapon room under the East Training Hall. Most students treated it like a museum with dust. I treated it like a thrift store built by dead geniuses. The weapon instructor watched me scan the racks. Most dragon scholars start with blade or fist. Safer, cleaner, easier to showcase. I stopped in front of the spear rack. Deep in my future memories, Elena Frost turned in a ruined snowfield, her frost sparrow spear cutting through ash so fine it looked like white rain. Her style was not mine, but the path was useful. Reach, timing, control, and enough distance to punish people before they touched civilians. The instructor followed my gaze. "Spear is not a beginner's solution." "Good," I said. "I am tired of beginner problems." He handed me a practice spear and stepped into the test ring. "Show me one clean form." I showed him 3. The first knocked his guard aside. The second stopped a finger from his throat. The third tapped the floor behind his heel before he realized I had moved past him. He lowered his own weapon slowly. "Where did you study spear?" "Bad dreams." He did not ask again. The weapon instructor did not unlock the back rack immediately. He pointed to 3 dents in the floor beside the sealed case. 3 upperclassmen tried to lift it last year. 1 tore a shoulder. 1 cracked the floor. 1 asked us to pretend he had never entered the room. "Smart third one," I said. "The spear rejects bad balance. It is not enough to be strong." That warning made the rack useful. The room had a clean bet now. Either I was another brute with a title, or the spear would admit my future memory understood reach better than local pride did. He unlocked the back rack and opened the sealed case. The Crimson Dragon spear lay inside, dark red metal wrapped around a mithril core. It had a name dramatic enough to embarrass itself. I wrapped my hand around the shaft. The first lift did not look dramatic. That was what embarrassed the room. The spear rose from the case without grinding, shaking, or throwing me backward. A red line along the shaft lit under my palm, crossed the mithril core, and stopped at the blade like the weapon had finished checking my balance. The future memory in my hand settled like a lock finding the right key. The instructor looked at the dents in the floor, then at the quiet spear. "Do not swing it inside," he said. "Because of the walls? Because of my employment? That alone made me fond of it. The weapon room should have been enough trouble for one day." Then Colton Rusk arrived at St. Tower. St. Tower was the one thing 7th St. Marshall University still had that better schools wanted. An old combat tower tied to leaderboards, resource rights, and school pride. 7th Saint had been weak for years, and Colton Rusk had come to make that weakness official. He walked out of the tower lobby while students gathered outside in a sick, angry crowd. His record attempt had failed to take the tower outright, but it had come close enough that Jonah Crest stood by the entrance with a face like bad news. Colton saw me with the crimson dragon spear and smiled for the cameras. "This is the Dragon Scholar?" he asked. "Good, let him watch. Tomorrow, I take the tower rights and 7th Saint can put my name where its pride used to be." The crowd bristled. Jonah Crest said, "Mercer, this does not concern your first week. The tower has resources," I said. "Yes, then it concerns me." Colton stepped in front of the entrance. "Freshmen do not jump the tower line because they brought a shiny spear." I looked at Jonah. "Is he registered as the door?" Jonah's mouth tightened. "No!" I moved Colton by the shoulder. Not a punch, not a throw. I just picked the angle where his stance had no answer and placed him 3 steps to the side like furniture that had been delivered to the wrong room. The cameras caught it. Colton's face went blank. Before I entered, Jonah Crest caught my sleeve and pointed to the leaderboard. The old record had been there so long, the digits looked permanent. "If you fail halfway, Colton uses the attempt against us," Jonah said. "If you break yourself, the school loses more than tower rights." Then I should not fail halfway. That was not reassurance, it was the plan. Jonah released my sleeve like he had just chosen to let a natural disaster manage itself. Then I entered St. Tower. The first floors were old pressure fields and Rift Beast projections. Useful, but not interesting. The middle floors tried to punish speed with traps. Crystal Mind Method saw them before they armed. The upper floors finally became worth my time. The Crimson Dragon Spear woke fully on floor 21. A projected beast lunged from fog. I cut its throat before the fog finished forming. Floor 22 stacked 3 opponents. I used the spear shaft to crush the first, the blade to split the second, and Sunbreaker Fist through the third when it got too close. The leaderboard outside began to change. Students watching in the plaza saw my name climb from unranked to top 50, top 20, top 10. Colton shouted something at the tower door. I did not hear it. Floor 28 threw a pressure field heavy enough to remind me of camp. Floor 29 used spirit interference. Floor 30 showed me a copy of the gold-eyed war ape and expected me to hesitate. That was rude. I planted the Crimson Dragon Spear through its chest and broke the projection into light. The St. Tower leaderboard flashed. "Ancient record broken. Caleb Mercer, 7th St. Marshall University." For once, the crowd outside did not need a speech. The tower did it for them. Their school name appeared beside mine on a record no rival had taken from them. Colton Rusk lost the challenger spotlight before he got to use tomorrow's threat. When I walked out, students were chanting my name. Jonah Crest looked from the tower board to me. His face said what the plaza was already chanting. The campus now belonged to my shadow, whether he liked the shape of it or not. I had come for training, not school spirit, but the tower was too useful to lose. The school started saying Demon King like it was a warning and a prayer. 2 nights later, Jonah Crest sent Landon to find me in the cafeteria. Landon looked nervous enough that he forgot to ask about my food. "There is a man outside," Landon said. "He asked for the Demon King." I found Walter Bell waiting under the St. Tower board. He was not a fighter. His coat was old, his hands were shaking, and his eyes had the empty shine of someone who had spent all his anger and kept walking on the debt. He did not bow to my title. He placed 2 photographs on the table between us. 2 young women, same smile, same eyes. Walter Bell touched the edge of the photographs and said, "Leon Decker murdered my daughters and bought every quiet answer they offered me. I do not want a lawsuit, Caleb Mercer. I want him dead." Walter Bell did not ask for justice. He asked for a death. That was why I listened. The 2 photographs sat on the cafeteria table under the St. Tower lights. 2 young women smiling at a camera, shoulders pressed together, alive in the careless way people look when they still think tomorrow belongs to them. Walter kept one finger on the corner of the left photo, like the paper might run if he let go. "Leon Decker destroyed them," he said. His voice was flat from overuse. He laughed when I begged. His family paid people to call it a private accident. Every office told me to file, wait, appeal, breathe, move on. He looked up at me. "I am done breathing politely." Landon Wells stood near the cafeteria entrance, pale and silent. Jonah Crest had followed him in but had not interrupted yet. Around us, students watched from a careful distance. The Demon King title made people curious, the photographs made them ashamed of being curious. I asked Walter, why me? Because St. Tower proved you can stand where protected people think they own the ground. Jonah Crest stepped forward then. Walter, this is not the way. Walter did not look at him. Your way buried my girls in forms. That line hit the room harder than shouting. Before Jonah could answer, a student messenger hurried in with a black envelope. No name on the outside, just a Decker family seal pressed into the flap. The messenger looked miserable enough that I knew he had not chosen the job. He handed it to Jonah first. Jonah read one line and his face went colder. Do not, Jonah said to me. I took the envelope anyway. Inside was a formal warning, written in the careful language rich families use when they want a threat to smell like law. It said Walter Bell had a history of emotional instability. It said further harassment of Leon Decker would trigger civil action against any party enabling him. It said 7th St. Marshall University should protect its reputation. At the bottom, someone had added one handwritten sentence. Old men fall downstairs. Walter saw the line because my hand stopped moving. His whole body went still. The room did not need proof beyond that. The Decker family had sent a warning before I even touched the arena. They were not afraid of being accused. They were annoyed Walter was still alive enough to accuse them. I folded the letter, slid it under the photographs, and said, now I know they can write. We will see if Leon can read the stage. Jonah had no clean answer. He was not the villain here. That made the moment uglier. Sometimes decent people still guard useless doors. I picked up one photograph. The girl in it wore a small ribbon at her wrist. In the other photo, her sister had the same ribbon in a different color. Tiny detail. Useless to an official report. Everything to a father. What did Leon say? I asked. Walter's mouth twisted. At the last hearing, he told me weak families should not raise daughters with expensive faces. The cafeteria changed. Even the students who had come to watch drama stopped moving. There it was. Not evidence, not procedure, the human answer. Leon Decker had not merely escaped consequence. He had enjoyed proving consequence belonged to other people. I set the photograph down. How do I reach him? Jonah Crest grabbed the back of the chair in front of him. Caleb, think. The Decker family is not a campus bully. Leon is protected, connected, and arrogant enough to bait you in public. If you hit him outside a legal arena, his family turns this school into your cage. Then give me an arena. Jonah stared at me. Walter closed his eyes. Leon deserving to fall was not the hard part. The hard part was the world offering me safety in exchange for teaching Walter Bell that his daughters were too expensive to avenge. Jonah lowered his voice. St. Crown Invitational opens in 3 days. Leon registered under Decker family sponsorship. The rules permit full contact surrender. In the final bracket, if both sides sign the lethal clause, death is recognized as combat consequence. One line would have saved time, I said. Jonah's jaw tightened. One line can also start a political war. Then write clearly. Walter looked at me like he had forgotten how to hope and did not trust the feeling. I pushed the photographs back to him. Bring those to the stage. I do not want anyone pretending they forgot why I am there. The St. Crown Invitational was not built like a school arena. It was built like Status had learned architecture. Tall lights, private boxes, polished seats. A central stage wide enough for people to die attractively on camera. The St. Crown Invitational Arena badge they gave me at registration felt less like permission and more like a dare. Jonah Crest walked beside me through the lower tunnel. Final warning, you can defeat him without killing him. You can embarrass him, break his token, force his family to negotiate. Walter did not ask for negotiation. Walter is grieving. Walter is right. Jonah stopped walking. I stopped too. He looked tired, older than he had at St. Tower. If you do this, people will stop treating you as a gifted student. They will treat you as a political threat. They already treat me like property when the number is useful. Let them be honest. Jonah did not argue after that. On the day of the match, the Decker family tried one more small cruelty before the bell. A private security guard at the lower tunnel stepped in front of Walter and pointed toward the public seating. Family members of unrelated challengers do not stand at fighter rail. Walter hugged the photographs to his chest and started to step back. I put one hand on the guard's shoulder. He looked at my hand, then at my face. This is arena policy. No, I said. This is the Decker family being afraid of 2 pieces of paper. The guard swallowed. He looked toward the private box, then toward Jonah Crest. Jonah's answer came fast. Walter Bell stands at Caleb Mercer's rail. If anyone objects, put the objection in writing after the match. The guard moved. Walter did not thank us. He only stepped to the rail and set the photographs where the stage cameras could see them. That small win mattered. Leon would not be allowed to turn the fight into a clean sport. He would have to perform in front of the faces he had tried to bury. Leon Decker entered the stage smiling. He wore white combat gear with a Decker family token pinned over his heart. The token was small, black, and ugly in the way family power gets ugly when nobody says no to it for long enough. Behind him, Decker allies filled one private box. They did not cheer. They watched like the result had already been paid for. Leon looked across the stage and saw Walter Bell standing behind my side rail with the 2 photographs in his hands. Leon laughed, not loudly. That made it worse. He lifted his voice so the arena microphones caught it. "Walter, you found a new son? How touching! Careful, Mercer." The last people he loved became paperwork. The audience reacted then. Some gasped, some went quiet, some looked toward the private boxes, checking whether outrage was permitted. The Decker allies did not move. Leon turned back to me. "You broke a tower and frightened campus trash. Congratulations! But this is the St. Crown Invitational. Here, names have weight." I looked at the token on his chest. "Then yours should fall faster." His smile sharpened. "Sign the lethal clause, hero, or go back to playing Demon King with freshmen." Jonah had warned me Leon would bait me. That was fine. Bait is only dangerous when the hook is hidden. The official stepped between us with the tablet. "Both fighters must confirm. Lethal clause permits death as recognized combat consequence. Surrender ends the match if heard and acknowledged before final impact. Confirm?" Leon pressed his thumb first. He winked at Walter while he did it. Walter's hands shook around the photographs. I pressed my thumb second. The arena screen flashed. "Lethal clause accepted." That was all the procedure Leon deserved. The bell rang. The first 30 seconds belonged to him on purpose. He was fast enough to make the crowd remember why the Decker family had dared to send him. His footwork cut corners, his palms carried cold force, and the broken charm on his chest pulsed whenever my counter came too close. In another arena, against another young fighter, Leon would have looked like destiny with better shoes. That was important. Walter had not asked me to crush a helpless idiot. He had asked me to prove a protected monster could bleed in front of the people who sold him protection. Leon moved with real skill. That mattered. If he had been a rich idiot with no hands, this would have been punishment, not a fight. His first step cut the distance cleanly. His palm carried a cold pressure that aimed for my ribs while his knee rose toward my hip. I let him show the arena enough to understand he was not helpless. Then I stepped aside. His palm missed. My elbow tapped his shoulder and broke his rhythm. He recovered faster than I expected, spun, and kicked toward my throat. Good. Walter deserved to see the protected monster try. Leon came again, faster, colder, uglier. The Decker token over his heart flashed each time he drew force from some stored charm inside it. Not illegal, apparently, just expensive enough to become tradition. He struck my chest. The impact rang against the immortal gold body spark sleeping under my skin. I moved back one step. Leon smiled at that step like it belonged to him. "There," he said, "even miracles retreat." I looked at the Decker token. "That thing only bought one step?" His smile cracked. The audience heard it. So did Walter. Leon attacked harder. He chained palm, elbow, knee, and a cutting heel strike so cleanly that several people in the first row leaned forward despite themselves. He wanted the arena to remember he had talent before it remembered anything else. I let him have 12 seconds. Then I used the Crimson Dragon Spear. Not the weapon, the memory of its reach. My hand moved like a spear point. I struck through the gap between Leon's guard and token, hit the center of his chest, and drove him backward across the stage. The Decker token cracked. The private box stood up. Leon looked down at the crack, and for the first time, his face showed something honest. Fear. Then he hid it under rage. "You think breaking a trinket changes blood?" he shouted. "My family will peel every little person around you off the street. That old man, your school friends, your parents if they are cheap enough to reach." The arena heard that too. He had one chance to surrender and chose to threaten my family in front of witnesses. Some debts are too ugly for paperwork. Leon charged with everything the broken token could still give him. I met him in the center. Sunbreaker fist hit once, the token shattered completely. The force passed through his guard, through his borrowed protection, and through the idea that his name made him untouchable. Leon Decker hit the stage on his back. He tried to speak. No surrender formed. His eyes found Walter Bell for 1 second. Then they emptied. The arena did not cheer. For a moment nobody trusted what they had seen. The arena screen still showed Leon's name. The private box still held his allies. The stage still had the polished lights, the expensive banners, and the same rules that had made everyone assume a Decker could leave whenever he wanted. Then the screen updated. Leon Decker, defeated. Combat consequence, death. That cold official line did what screaming could not. It told every protected spectator that the stage had recognized the result before they could rewrite it. Walter Bell did not cheer either. He folded around the photographs like the last bone inside him had finally broken, and he cried into his daughter's faces without making a sound. The Decker allies in the private box stayed standing. For once, status had no sentence ready. I picked up the broken Decker token from the stage and placed it beside Walter's photographs before security could decide whether grief counted as a threat. He saw them, I told Walter. Walter pressed the photographs to his chest and nodded once. His nod mattered more than the arena's silence. The consequence came before I left the arena. Jonah Crest met me in the lower tunnel with 2 sealed offers and a face like he hated both. Protection, he said. One through the university. One through a Saint-level sponsor connected to Eastern Defense Command. Temporary shelter for your family, restricted movement for you, controlled statements, no unsupervised appearances, a leash with better locks. A shield, Jonah said, a shield that tells the Decker family exactly where to swing. He pushed the papers toward me. Caleb, you killed a protected son on a national stage. Refusing shelter is not courage, it is risk. I know, then sign. I looked back toward the arena tunnel. Walter was still there with the photographs. Students, officials, and Decker allies were all learning the same thing from different directions. I could be used, feared, praised, or condemned, but I would not be parked neatly under someone else's umbrella because powerful people disliked rain. I pushed the offers back. No. Jonah's voice dropped. Your parents do not know what this costs. That line landed. Frank and Linda had held a deed on our porch and thought the worst of poverty was behind them. Nora had joked about me picking buildings to rob legally. They had seen the reward side of my fame. They had not seen the invoice. But hiding them under a stranger's banner would not erase the target. It would teach every enemy that my family was the soft place to press. I will protect my own, I said. Jonah looked like he wanted to shake me and knew it would not help. He kept 1 copy of the offer and tore the other in half. Then at least let campus security escort you home. They will slow me down. That is the problem with you, Jonah said. Every answer sounds insane until it works. Then wait for the useful part. I left the St. Crown Invitational with Leon Decker dead, Walter Bell crying, the Decker token broken, and every comfortable path behind me getting narrower. Outside the tunnel, messages were already hitting Starweb. Some called me a murderer. Some called me Walter Bell's knife. Some slowed the clip down frame by frame and argued about whether Leon had tried to surrender. The arena audio killed that argument quickly. Leon's last clear words were not surrender. They were a threat aimed at my family. The audio mattered, but I did not stand there reading comments. Public opinion was not protection, it was weather. The real storm would come from people who did not need to post before moving. For 1 hour, nobody attacked. That made me more nervous than a crowd. Nova's warning hit before I reached my front door. It did not come as a long archive lecture. It came as one red line across my vision. Danger sense conflict detected. Mercer home. Now. The Dragon Scholar reward had bought my family a better house. The Decker family had found the address. Nova's warning hit while the St. Crown Invitational clip was still burning through Starweb. Danger sense conflict detected. Mercer home. Now. I did not finish reading the threats under Leon Decker's death replay. Public opinion could wait. My parents could not. I did not wait for a car. Dragon Scholar, Morning Star, Demon King, all those titles were useless in the 10 seconds between a warning and a blade. I ran across the residence district hard enough to crack the sidewalk at 2 corners. A security guard at the outer gate shouted for my badge. I was already over the fence before he finished the word. The nicer streets made the danger uglier. Quiet lawns, clean windows, motion lights glowing like nothing bad could happen to families with proper deeds. That was the lie status sold best. It made danger look rude instead of real. My family's new home came into view with every downstairs window dark. Only the talisman above the front door burned red. The Capital District residents had a better gate than our old house, better glass, better locks, and a family security talisman I had pinned above the front door after the governor's convoy. I told Frank Mercer it was a cheap sensor. I told Linda Mercer it was for my peace of mind. I told Nora Mercer not to touch it because she liked touching warnings just to see if I would twitch. When I reached the front steps, the talisman was burning through the paint. Inside the house, my mother was screaming my name. The front door opened before I touched it. A man in a black mask stepped out with a knife low against his sleeve. He expected a frightened family behind him or campus security in front of him. He got my hand around his throat. I drove him back through the entryway so hard his mask cracked against the wall. The foyer was full of them. They had brought black bags, wrist ties, and silencers. The gear told me enough. This was not a clean murder crew. It was a message crew. Black bags for proof, wrist ties for leverage, silencers for denial. One white mask held the burned chain of my security talisman between 2 fingers. He shook it at me. Cute charm. I looked at the chain. Expensive mistake. 12 white masks, dark coats, short blades. No wasted movement. They had come through the windows, the rear door, and the garage, and they had done it quietly enough that the neighbors still had no idea our new house had become an execution room. Frank stood in front of Linda with a chair in both hands. Nora had one of my old training rods braced in both hands, with the nearest white mask still 2 steps from her. The man in the center wore a black mask instead of white. He had one hand lifted toward my family, and the confidence of someone who had been told the famous student was still at the arena. He lowered his hand when he saw me. "Caleb Mercer," he said. "Kane Black, the Decker family sends regards." "Through the front door?" I asked. His mask tilted. "Through your parents." That was his last clean sentence. The first breath belonged to the men nearest my family. One white mask lunged for Frank. I crossed the room and broke the assassin's wrist before the blade reached the chair. I used the same man as a shield when 2 others struck from the side, then drove all 3 into the stair rail. Wood exploded. Masks split. Blades hit the floor. The second breath belonged to the windows. 4 assassins moved at once, fast enough to look like shadows to normal eyes. Crystal Mind Method turned them into lines, angles, and stupid decisions. One blade aimed for my ribs, one for my knee. One cut toward Nora's raised rod. One shifted toward Linda's scream. I caught the one reaching for Linda by the face and put him through the dining table. Nora swung her rod at the mask near her. It would not have hurt him. It made him look at her. That was enough. I stepped between them and hit him with Sunbreaker Fist. Heat cracked through his chest guard and threw him into the kitchen island. The last 2 reached the window, trying to use distance. Victor Crane's captured spirit thread snapped from my wrist. They fell before the glass stopped shaking. The third breath belonged to Kane Black. He did not rush me. That made him better than the others. His black mask turned toward the bodies, toward my family, then back to me. He pulled a thin black blade from his sleeve, and the air around it smelled bitter. "Leon begged?" he asked. "No." "Then maybe your father will." Frank tightened his grip on the chair. I said, "Dad, put that down." Frank did not move. I looked at him once. "Please." That word did what danger had not. Frank lowered the chair. Kane's mask tilted toward Frank's lowered chair. Then he moved toward my father anyway. I met him halfway. His blade scraped across my side and found one gap the immortal gold body had not finished closing. Pain flashed hot and dirty. Poison tried to climb through the cut. Kane's eyes brightened behind the black mask. "There," he said. "The monster bleeds." I grabbed his wrist and held the blade in my own side. "Yes," I said, "that is the bad news for you." I pulled the blade deeper by an inch so he could not pull away, then punched him in the center of the mask. The black mask folded into his face. Kane Black hit the floor at my parents' feet. His blade slid out of my side. The poison burned for half a second before Starbody Method crushed it. Kane tried to breathe. The sound was wet, confused, and useless. I crouched beside him. "The Decker family sent regards," I said. "Take mine back." His eyes emptied before I finished the line. One white mask near the stairs was still breathing. He had lost his blade and most of his courage. He dragged himself toward the broken window, leaving a dark smear across Linda's polished floor. I let him reach the sill. Hope is useful when you want the lesson to hurt. When his hand touched the frame, I stepped on his coat and pinned him there. He looked back at me through the cracked mask. I said, "You can crawl, or you can talk." His voice shook. "Decker pays better than mercy." "Wrong room." I snapped the mask off his face, not to learn a name, but so my family could see the monster was only a man who had chosen the wrong house. Then I put him down beside the others before he could reach the grass. The room stayed loud after the killing stopped, not with screams, with breathing. Linda had both hands over her mouth. Frank's chair was on the floor. Nora's training rod shook in her fist. The family security talisman above the door had burned down to a black thread. My new house smelled like smoke, poison, and broken status. Nora looked at the white mask scattered across the floor. "This was because of Leon?" I did not soften it. "Yes," Linda whispered. "Caleb, what did you do?" "I came home." "Before that," Frank said. He did not sound angry. That made it worse. I looked at the bodies between us and understood the governor's deed had only moved my family into a nicer target. The reward side of my name had arrived in a convoy. The invoice had arrived wearing masks. "I killed a man who deserved it," I said. His family answered wrong. Nora lowered the rod. Her hands were still shaking. "And next time?" "There is no next time from them. I meant Kane and the 12 masks. I did not mean the world." An Eastern Defense Command response team reached the gate after the fight was already over. The first officer through the door saw the masks, saw my parents, saw me still dripping poison black blood from my side, and reached for a report tablet out of habit. Nora turned on him before I could. "If you ask my brother to describe this like a homework assignment," she said, "I will make you eat that tablet." The officer froze. Frank looked at Nora like he wanted to tell her not to threaten military staff, then looked at the bodies and decided parenting could wait. I pointed to the foyer. "Clear the house, no questions until my family is behind an actual guard line." The officer found the right answer fast. "Yes, sir, sir." Frank heard it, Linda heard it, Nora heard it. That one word did not make the blood easier to see, but it changed the shape of the room. I was not only their sons standing among bodies, I was someone soldiers answered while my mother tried not to shake apart. Linda touched my sleeve and whispered, "Are you hurt?" "Not enough." She hated that answer. I hated that it was true. Nova burned a second line across my vision before I could take one full step toward my mother. Core instability detected. Immortal gold body, incomplete. Forced fracture available. The future had never given me a gift without asking whether I wanted to pay in flesh. Kane's blade had found the gap. The next Kane would aim for the same place. The next enemy would not care that Linda had almost watched me bleed in the foyer. I turned toward the front yard. Nora said, "Do not walk away after saying something like that." "I'm not walking away. That is exactly what your feet are doing." I looked back at her. "Then keep Mom and Dad inside." Nora's eyes filled with fear and rage, which made her look more like me than either of us wanted. "Do not do something stupid alone." "It's already stupid," I said. "I'm trying to make it work." I stepped into the front yard before she could follow. The night air hit the cut in my side. I drove natural breath down until my lungs stopped panicking. The black marrow pool had left the gold spark in my bones for weeks, bright but unfinished. I had treated it like a resource waiting for a safer hour. There was no safer hour. I turned Sunbreaker fist inward. My core cracked, not metaphorically, not spiritually in some clean classroom diagram. Something inside my chest split with a sound I felt in my teeth. Gold heat poured through the crack. Every old injury woke up at once, the bite from the first corpse, the pressure from the war ape, General Arthur Rourke's palm strike, Kane's poisoned cut. I dropped to one knee in the grass. Linda screamed from inside the house. Frank held her back. Nora did not. She came to the doorway and stopped at the threshold because the heat rolling off me bent the air. "Caleb!" Nora shouted. I could not answer. The gold spark became a net. Then armor. Then a second skeleton burning through the first. The incomplete immortal gold body seized the black marrow pool residue and hammered it into every place Kane's blade could have killed me. The cracked core did not heal. It became a forge. Gold light crawled under my skin, then vanished. The response team outside stopped talking. Even through the walls, soldiers know when a body does something it should not. The gold pressure rolled over the front yard and made every porch light on the block flicker. One neighbor opened his curtains, saw the military vehicles, saw me kneeling in a burnt circle, and closed them again with the speed of a man who had discovered privacy. Good. Some lessons did not need witnesses. The poison cut sealed last, slow and insulting. When I stood, the grass around me had burned into a perfect black circle. Nora stared at it. "You are never calling me dramatic again." I coughed, tasted blood, and smiled despite myself. No promises. That should have been the moment I went inside and let my mother hit me for terrifying her. My phone rang. Claire Donovan's name filled the screen. No hello, no banter, no complaint about the damage I had probably caused in another official budget. Claire said, "Western line is collapsing." The smile left my face. Behind her voice, alarm screamed. "How bad?" I asked. 3 Tier 7 rift beasts crossed the outer barrier. The soldiers are out of ground. General Rourke is pulling every asset he can reach. Assets, I repeated. "Do not make me say it pretty," Claire said. Her voice shook once, then locked down. "We need you." Frank heard enough from the doorway. He said, "You just got home." I looked at the masks on the foyer floor, my mother's pale face, Nora's white-knuckled grip on the training rod, and the black circle under my feet. "I know." Linda stepped into the doorway. "Are we safe now?" That was a terrible question because the honest answer was too large. I gave her the only answer that mattered that night. "From the people in this house, yes." Nora looked past me toward the street, where Eastern Defense Command lights were already flashing at the gate. "And from everything else?" I picked up Kane Black's broken mask from the floor and put it on the entry table. "Everything else has to stand in line." The military jet waited on a closed highway strip outside the residence district. I did not remember the drive. That was mercy. 1 minute, Frank was gripping my shoulder hard enough to pretend I was still small. The next, Claire's voice was in my headset, and the jet was climbing so sharply the city lights fell away like sparks. A pilot shouted, "Drop zone is unstable, no landing." "Good," I said. Claire came through the headset. "Caleb, the Western Line distress flare is still active. You will have less than 20 seconds before ground impact. Then tell the soldiers not to blink." The pilot looked back once. "Is he serious?" Claire said. "Unfortunately." The rear door opened over smoke, fire, and a line of soldiers running backward across broken ground. A red distress flare burned below them, throwing color over armor, mud, and 3 shapes that should not have fit in the present world. Tier 7 rift beasts. The first one tore through a bunker. The second climbed over the wreckage. The third lowered its head toward a cluster of soldiers trapped behind a collapsed wall. The soldiers below were already running out of ground. I jumped. Wind hit like a wall. The crimson dragon spear locked into my hands on the way down. Gold heat rose through my bones, cleaner than it had ever been. I landed on the first beast's spine and drove the spear through its skull into the dirt. The impact threw soldiers off their feet. The second beast turned. I pulled the spear free and cut through its throat before it finished recognizing me. The third lunged for the trapped soldiers. I reached it first. Sunbreaker fist struck upward under its jaw. Gold light tore through bone, hide, and rift stink. The beast lifted off the ground and crashed backward into the broken bunker. 3 Tier 7 beasts fell in front of soldiers who had been seconds from dying. For one breath, the western line belonged to silence. Then the smoke behind the corpses split open, and something deeper in the rift screamed back. The first 3 Tier 7 rift beasts died before my boots cooled. That did not save the western line. It only proved the line had someone left to stand on it. The soldiers behind the collapsed bunker stared at the 3 corpses like the sky had dropped an answer with bad manners. One of them tried to salute me with a shaking hand. Another dragged a wounded friend away from the third beast's twitching tail. A third soldier looked past me, saw the smoke splitting open behind the bodies and shouted, "More coming!" That was the useful reaction. Fear that moved people was better than awe that froze them. I pulled the crimson dragon spear out of the first beast's skull and pointed toward the evacuation trench. "Carry the wounded! Stop watching me!" The soldier who had tried to salute snapped into motion. "Yes, sir! Sir, again!" The word still sounded wrong, but the western line did not care what sounded natural. The rift behind the smoke screamed, the ground buckled, and a fourth beast forced its head through a break in the barrier. I went to meet it. The next 3 days did not become clean war stories. They became smoke, claws, and people learning how fast a line can die if everyone waits for permission. The fourth beast broke through with a bunker plate hanging from its jaw. A captain kept shouting into a dead command channel while his squad stared at the civilians trapped behind a collapsed defense wall. "Permission is the thing you ask for after living," I told him. Then I punched the plate off the beast's face and drove the crimson dragon spear through its mouth. The captain stopped asking and started moving. By day 2, the rift beasts came in waves. Not pretty tournament opponents, not clean exam dummies. Ugly things with too many joints, hides full of broken metal, and hunger that did not understand my titles. Good. Titles were for people, spear points were for everything else. The immortal gold body held where my old body would have split. Claws scraped gold heat instead of muscle. Poison smoked before it entered. Even when a beast threw me through a concrete brace, I stood up angry instead of injured. One captain saw me holding Sector 4 and tried to spend me for his own record. He pulled a squad from the civilian road without telling command and shoved them toward a beast cluster that was already turning. The squad went because rank still sounds like safety when shells are falling. The gap opened behind them. I reached the civilians first, killed the beast pushing through the opening, then crossed back before the captain's borrowed squad became a funeral. The captain shouted, "You left your assigned point!" I dragged a rift beast head across the mud and dropped it in front of his boots. "Your assigned brain wandered off. Go find it." His own squad heard me. Later, when that same captain tried to call my record inflated, the squad did not back him. Soldiers remember who almost got them killed for a cleaner report. By day 3, the line stopped retreating. By day 3, the western line had bought back ground. Not a badge. Not a report. Ground. The soldiers who had been running when I dropped from the jet were now standing behind me and firing into gaps instead of away from them. A medic slapped a blood patch over his own arm and went back for another wounded man. A young soldier with a cracked helmet put himself between a rift beast and a stretcher because he believed I would arrive before belief killed him. I did. The beast's jaw closed on air. My spear took its head. The soldier fell backward, laughing and crying at the same time. I knew it. "Next time," I told him, "know it from farther away." He laughed harder. After that, the soldier stopped calling me student when the rift screamed. The final wave before stabilization brought Claire Donovan into the field. She came with a relay pack on her back and 2 wounded signal officers behind her because the command net had died at the worst possible bend in the line. I saw her step over a broken defense plate, saw the pendant at her throat flash once, and saw the ground split under her left boot. A rift beast's claw came up through the crack. I crossed 30 yards before the claw closed. Claire hit my chest when I pulled her clear. The claw snapped shut on empty air and tore the relay pack strap instead of her spine. For 1 second, she was close enough that I felt the pendant pulse against the immortal gold body heat under my skin. Then she shoved off me and said, "I had it." "Your relay pack disagreed. It is a coward." The signal officers heard that and started laughing too hard for men standing near a rift. Claire glared at them until they remembered survival. That tiny argument should have been nothing. It stayed in my head anyway. By the time Eastern Defense Command rotated the last civilians out, the Western line looked less like a battlefield and more like a butchered road to the future. Beast corpses filled trenches, black smoke leaked from cracks. My uniform had been replaced twice and ruined 3 times. General Arthur Rourke arrived after the line stabilized, which was a very general thing to do. He stepped out of a command carrier, looked at the beast bodies and said, "I leave you with a collapsing front and you redecorate." I was unsupervised, I said. Claire Donovan stood beside him. She did not joke. That was new enough to shut me up. Her eyes moved over my face, my hands, the dried blood at my collar, and the gold glow fading under my skin. She touched the silver pendant at her throat once, a quick habit, then dropped her hand when she caught me noticing. Arthur watched that without comment, which told me he was smarter than most people with authority. The jealous captains were less smart. They waited in the temporary command hall, where the Eastern Defense Command merit ledger had been projected across one wall. It listed rift beast kills, rescue counts, stabilized sectors, and resource damage prevented. My name sat beside numbers that made the room uncomfortable. One captain with a bandaged jaw looked at the ledger and said, "Battlefield chaos inflates records. A student gets dropped into one dramatic point, cameras love it, and suddenly command calls him a strategic asset." Another captain added, "A 12-star general rating is not a toy." Claire's voice cut through the hall. "No one said toy?" The first captain looked at me, then let him demonstrate without smoke and screaming soldiers. Arthur smiled. I had seen that smile before he hit me after the Black Marrow pool. It was the smile of a man about to make someone regret using a clear sentence. Arthur pointed to the reinforced rating plate in the center of the hall. One clear threshold, full force impact resistance and output. Officers in this room understand what the numbers mean. Satisfied? The captain's face tightened. He had asked for doubt. Arthur gave him a stage. "I stepped onto the plate," Claire said, quietly enough for only me to hear. "Controlled. That word keeps following me. Because you keep scaring expensive objects." The rating plate woke under my feet. It was not an exam machine for students. It was built for officers, field commanders, and the kind of people who thought the word impossible was a negotiation tactic. The captain with the bandaged jaw folded his arms. "If he fails, the rating recommendation is withdrawn." "If he fails," Arthur said, "I will let you tell him." That did not comfort the captain. The plate struck first. Pressure rose from the floor, then from the walls, then from overhead. It tried to pin my joints, slow my breath, and make the immortal gold body show its seams. The numbers climbed on the wall. 6-star, 8-star, 10-star. The room went quiet at 11. At 12, the plate turned red. The operator reached for the emergency cutoff. I lifted one hand. "Don't!" Then I punched the pressure field. The sound knocked dust out of the ceiling. The field shattered inward. The rating plate did not explode. Eastern Defense Command must have paid someone competent for once. It did, however, print the result in large white letters across the wall. 12-star general rating confirmed. Manual promotion protocol triggered. The jealous captain looked like the wall had spit in his face. Arthur Rourke took a black case from an aide and opened it. Inside sat a 12-star general badge and an updated Eastern Defense Command merit ledger chip. Military objects were still ugly, still heavy, and still too blunt to lie. Arthur pinned the badge to my jacket himself. "Caleb Mercer," he said, loud enough for every officer in the hall. "Eastern Defense Command recognizes your Western Line record and confirms 12-star general rating authority for active rift operations." The room had no choice then. The captains saluted. The bandaged captains saluted last. I looked at his left hand hanging stiff at his side. "Use the right hand," I said. "The left still looks jealous." Someone in the back coughed like he was dying to avoid laughing. The captain's salute straightened. The badge made the order official. The salute made it personal. Men who had called me overpraised had to put their hands to their heads in front of the ledger that proved it. The badge was heavy, but Claire's silence weighed more. Badges changed how soldiers stood around me. Claire's silence changed how I stood around her. After the hall cleared, she stood with me near a cracked window overlooking the lime. Soldiers below were stacking defense plates and painting new warnings over burned concrete. The rift still pulsed beyond the barrier, but for the first time in days, people were walking instead of running. Claire touched her pendant again. I said, "You do that when you are worried." She looked at me. "You notice too much. Only useful things. Then notice this. The more they rate you, the less they will ask whether you are tired." I am always tired. That is not the same as safe. Nova chose that exact moment to make my life worse. A future biography prompt flickered in the corner of my vision. I had not asked for it. Claire Donovan, future relation variable, unstable, survival thread, locked. I shut the prompt before I could say anything more. Claire saw my expression change. "What? Bad timing. Does it bite?" "Only my patience." She held my gaze for a second too long. "Then tell your patience to wait until I am not standing in front of you." That might be what made it bad timing. For the first time since the Western line, she smiled. Then Ethan Donovan arrived and killed the smile with brotherly efficiency. He entered the command hall carrying a sealed cave map and wearing the expression of a man who had heard my name too many times from people he trusted. He had Claire's eyes, colder delivery, and none of her restraint. Claire turned before he spoke. Ethan Donovan, if you start in my operations room, I will finish it in front of Eastern Defense Command. Ethan lifted both hands. I came with a mission file. He looked at my badge. Then he looked at Claire's pendant. Then he looked at me like I was another rift problem with better press. Congratulations, Ethan said. They made you 12 stars. Did they also teach you not to collect my sister as another resource? The room did not need private thoughts to understand him. Claire's face hardened. Ethan, I said, if this is a family background check, use a smaller room. Ethan's eyes narrowed. If this is arrogance, use a smaller grave. Claire stepped between us with the cave map hard enough to slap it against the table. Enough. Black Ridge Mountain opened below the mithril seam. Eastern Defense Command found something inside that does not match a normal rift. The map showed old mining tunnels, new cracks, and a marked chamber under Pine Hollow. That alone would have been a resource mission. Mithril meant weapons. Unknown rift residue meant danger. Either one could justify a team. Then Claire opened the sample case. Black mist curled inside the glass. The room temperature seemed to drop. My body recognized it before my mind chose the word. The ruined future streets. The ash, the dead sky, the stain in places where humanity had lost too much ground. I stepped closer. Claire watched me. You know it. I have seen something like it. Where? I looked at Ethan, at the officers, at the sample crawling inside its glass like it wanted fingers in places that should not exist yet. Ethan hated that answer. Claire stopped joking. Arthur Rourke entered behind us and heard the last line. He did not ask for a lecture. He pointed at the cave map. Then you go. Claire commands the expedition. Ethan goes because his team found the lower breach and because arguing with his sister in a cave will be less annoying than doing it in my hall. Claire said, General. Arthur smiled. That was me being generous. The expedition began before military paperwork could grow teeth. No long briefing, no ceremonial send-off. The cave under Black Ridge Mountain did not care about protocol, and the black mist sample had already ruined the idea that this was only about ore. We descended with a small team, hard lights, sealed packs, and the cave map glowing on Claire's wrist display. Ethan walked near the front, always half a step ahead of where Claire wanted him. I stayed beside her because the pendant at her throat had started to pulse the closer we got to the marked chamber. She noticed me noticing again. Stop watching my necklace, Claire said. It's making the same mistake as everyone else. What mistake? Reacting to me. She almost smiled. Ethan heard enough to turn around. Flirt after the mission, he said. Claire pointed at him. Walk! The tunnel narrowed. Mithril veins glittered in the rock like trapped moonlight. Then the veins stopped. Black mist seeped through a crack ahead. Every light in the tunnel dimmed at once. Ethan froze. I heard nothing. He did. His head tilted toward the mist and his mouth opened slightly. Claire said, Ethan? He did not answer her. Ethan Donovan reached toward the black mist like someone had called him by a name no one else knew. By the time I caught Ethan Donovan's wrist, the black mist had already touched his glove. It did not spread like smoke. It licked. A thin black tongue curled around his fingers, sank into the fabric, and pulled as if the cave itself had decided he belonged to it. Ethan's eyes were open, but they were not focused on the tunnel in front of us. Claire Donovan grabbed his other arm. Ethan, look at me, he whispered. It said your name. The cave went colder. Ethan's whisper gave us the first answer, and it was the worst kind of clue. The mist was not only poison, not only rift residue, not only a strange resource problem for Eastern Defense Command to lock behind a better door. It knew how to bait. I tore Ethan's hand away. Black threads snapped from his glove and recoiled into the crack. Ethan staggered back into Claire. She held him upright, and for 1 second he looked like the brother who had come to protect her instead of the man who had almost reached into something hungry. Ethan tried to pull free of both of us. I am fine, his glove answered by tightening. Black lines crawled under the fabric in the shape of veins. Claire pulled a knife and cut the glove open with one clean motion. The outer layer peeled away, and the mist underneath snapped at her blade like a little mouth. The cave team backed up. One soldier lifted his rifle toward Ethan's hand. Ethan saw it and went still for the wrong reason. Pride can survive fear, but it hates being treated like a target. I stepped between the rifle and Ethan. Do not aim at him unless you want me to grade your reflexes. The rifle lowered. Claire's voice went flat. Nobody shoots my brother unless I give the order, and if I give that order, I will do it myself. Ethan looked at her then. The anger in him changed shape. It did not vanish. It found shame and had to share space. The black mist retreated into the crack. Then, the crack sealed. Not closed! Sealed! The stone grew over it like a wound deciding to lie. Then the chanting started. It came from below the floor, not loud, not organized enough to be a song. Human voices, cracked and dry, repeating one word until it stopped sounding human. Abyss! The cave wall ahead folded open along a seam the map had not shown. Hard lights flickered. The cave team lifted rifles and spirit blades. Claire pushed Ethan behind her, which made him furious enough to wake fully. "Do not shield me," Ethan snapped. Claire did not look back. "Then stop touching haunted fog." That line would have been funny anywhere else. The Ash Choir came out of the dark. They wore torn expedition gear, scavenged armor, and black marks painted over their mouths like they had tried to swallow the mist and failed to keep it down. Some carried blades. Some carried nothing but broken fingers and eyes too wide for the light. The black mist crawled around their ankles, and every step they took left wet prints on stone. Some of them wore old Eastern Defense Command patches turned inside out. That detail hit the team harder than the screaming. Monsters were easy to hate. Missing people wearing pieces of your uniform were not. One soldier near the rear whispered a prayer and then looked ashamed for needing one. The Ash Choir heard the weakness and smiled with black teeth. One of the cave team members whispered, "People!" "No," I said. "People stop when warned." Claire raised her weapon and called to the figures. "Eastern Defense Command, stop where you are." The Ash Choir did not stop. They opened their black-marked mouths and screamed. The first wave hit like a mob with no fear of injury. That was more dangerous than skill. Skilled people guarded ribs, eyes, joints, and pride. The Ash Choir threw themselves onto blades if it put their teeth closer to someone's throat. I stepped ahead of the team. The Crimson Dragon Spear made the narrow tunnel mine. One fanatic lunged low. I broke his shoulder with the shaft and kicked him into two more. Another came over the wall on all fours, too fast for the soldier beside Claire. I pinned it through the chest before it reached his neck. The third tried to bite the spear blade and lost half his face for the education. A fanatic slipped under the spear and clamped both hands around my ankle. His fingers broke when I moved, but he kept smiling. That was the horror. Pain had become a language they no longer respected. I drove the spear butt down and pinned him to the stone, then kicked his body back into the line of bodies crawling behind him. "Do not let them grab you," I told the team. Ethan cut another fanatic off Claire's left and snapped. "You think?" "I think loudly for people near haunted fog," Claire said. "Both of you, fight!" We did. The cave team held after that because they saw the shape of the fight. My spear owned the center. Their job was to keep the edges from becoming graves. Ethan recovered enough to draw his weapon. He was good. That was the irritating part. His strikes were sharp, disciplined, and protective when his pride was not driving. He cut one fanatic away from Claire's blind side, then shoved a wounded team member back behind the line. Claire saw it and said, Do that version!" Ethan shouted. "I am busy, so improve while busy." They really were related. The Ash Choir thinned. Then the tunnel behind them breathed. A man walked out of the black mist with both arms spread and a smile full of dark blood. "Ronan Cade!" I knew the name because one soldier behind me choked it out. The way the cave team stiffened told me Ronan was not a stranger. He was one of the people they had expected to find on a list, not walking out of the mist with black veins under his skin. The soldier who said his name sounded like the cave had just returned the worst answer to a question he had been carrying. "Ronan Cade was on the first lower survey," the soldier said. "He pulled 6 people out before the tunnel closed." Ronan tilted his head toward him. "And the abyss pulled me out of being small." That single answer killed whatever mercy the old story might have bought him. Maybe he had been brave once. Maybe the cave had swallowed a better man and spit out this smiling thing. I was not there for the old version. I was standing in front of the one using Claire's name like bait. Ronan looked at the dead fanatics on the floor and sighed. "Still wasting bodies," he said. "The abyss gives, and little soldiers count losses." Claire aimed at him. "Ronan Cade, stand down." He smiled at her. "Claire Donovan, your voice is warmer than the mist promised." Ethan stepped forward. "Do not say her name." Ronan's smile widened. "He made his mistake there. He paused for the sermon." I did not pause. Ronan lifted one hand toward the mist. "The abyss chose me as its." I crossed the tunnel and punched him before he finished the title. Sunbreaker fist hit his chest. The black veins across his body lit from the inside, then burst. Ronan Cade flew backward through his own mist, smashed into the rock wall, and slid down with his mouth still shaped around the word he had not earned. The Ash Choir screamed, "Not in rage!" in panic. Their chosen man had died before the sermon found a period. That broke them more efficiently than killing the rest. Some ran deeper into the cave. Some dropped to their knees. One tried to crawl toward Ronan's body like proximity could make him chosen again. I put the spear tip under his chin. "Choose breathing," I said. He chose it. The cave team stopped firing. Claire kept her weapon on Ronan's body for 3 seconds after he stopped moving. Then, she looked at me. Her face did not ask whether I understood what we had found. It asked how long I had been afraid of it. The black mist thickened behind Ronan. Nova woke in my vision without being called. Nova did not open a lecture. It opened 4 images. The first was the dead street from my first nightmare, the burned bus still visible under future ash. The second was the chamber beneath Black Ridge Mountain, drawn in red as if the archive had been waiting for a living person to stand there. The third was a battlefield I had never seen, black mist rising like a tide under a sky with no stars. The fourth was blank except for one instruction: do not let the path stabilize. Then the text came. Fireseed Archive conflict match detected. Asterbase, 1359 wasteland residue confirmed. Abyss breach. Present layer. Second battlefield vector identified. Future collapse feed active. The words were short. The cave team did not understand the archive words, but they understood my face. Rifles lowered from bodies and aimed at the mist instead. Good! The truth had changed their aim before any lecture could. The 4 archive lines hit harder than any history lecture. The nightmare had not been a warning from far away, it had roots under my feet. I stared at the black mist, and for a moment I smelled the ruined Brookhaven street where the first corpse had crawled out from behind a burned bus. Same rot, same metal taste, same feeling that humanity had lost something and kept walking for a while before admitting it. Claire stepped closer. Caleb, I said, the future collapse starts here. Not only here, but this is one of the roots. Ethan turned on me. What does that mean? It means this is not a cave problem. Claire lowered her weapon a few inches, not because the danger had passed, but because the shape of it had changed. You recognized the sample before we entered. Yes. And you did not tell us everything. No. Ethan took one angry step toward me. Then start. Claire stopped him with one hand against his chest. Her eyes stayed on mine. Later. Right now, what does the mist do? Feeds, corrupts, opens paths it should not open. I looked at Ronan's broken body. And it lies with people's names. That last line finally made Ethan look away. The cave team had stopped arguing about fanatics. They had started looking at the chamber beyond Ronan. Gold lined the back wall. Not little flakes, not pretty dust, a vein thick enough to make disciplined people stupid. One miner made the first greedy sound. A captain made the second by saying, "This location is under Eastern Defense Command emergency seal, no public release until command determines control." A second team member looked at the gold, then at the bodies, then at me. The first people to file this own the leverage. That is how resource claims work. There it was, abyss in the floor, dead fanatics in the tunnel, Ronan Cade cooling against the wall, Claire's brother still shaking from a voice in the mist. And greed had found a calculator. I took out my phone. The captain saw the movement. Do not transmit from inside an active site. The captain's mouth tightened. Resource panic helps no one. Greed is already panicking, I said. The miner pointed at the gold with a hand that had been steady during the fight and was shaking now. You do not understand what a vein that size does for families. I understand exactly what money does for families, I said. That is why I do not let the first liar in a cave decide who gets to breathe near it. I opened Starweb. He reached for my wrist. Mercer, that is an order. I looked at his hand until he removed it. Then I posted one public line with the location tag, the gold vein, and the Eastern Defense Command emergency warning attached. Black Ridge Mountain Cave gold vein discovered under active rift hazard. Public record now. First thief owns nothing. The post went live before the captain remembered how to breathe. His private leverage died on a loading screen. The miner swore. The team member who had mentioned claims went pale. Someone's tablet pinged as the public alert began to spread. Claire stared at the post, then at me. You just made command's job worse. I made theft less profitable. The captain's face twisted. You destroyed negotiation value. No, I said. I destroyed your version of quiet. The cave team stopped arguing over gold. Public alerts spread. Command pings started screaming. The captain's private leverage had nowhere left to hide. For 5 clean seconds, greed had no room to whisper. Then Claire's pendant flashed. The light was sharp enough to turn every head. Ethan's glove, the one the mist had touched, began to smoke. He looked down at it. I did not move. The black threads under the fabric moved for him. They crawled across his wrist, up his forearm, and pulsed toward Claire's pendant like a hooked line finding its weight. Ethan grabbed his own arm and gritted his teeth. Claire reached for him. Ethan, drop the glove. His eyes lost focus again. He whispered, It says she can open it. I moved. Claire moved too. The problem was timing. She shoved Ethan away from the black threads at the same moment I cut through them with a crimson dragon spear. The severed threads hit the cave floor and sank into the stone. The chamber under us answered. The floor split. Not like rock breaking, like flesh opening. A worm-like abyss beast burst from the crack, pale underneath and black along the spine, its mouth a ring of wet stone teeth. It did not go for Ethan. It went for the pendant light at Claire's throat. I caught the edge of its mouth with both hands. For 1 second, I held it open. The immortal gold body burned. My boots carved trenches in stone. Claire slammed spirit force into its side. Ethan shouted her name. The cave team fired until the tunnel filled with sparks. The worm did not care. It folded wrong, like its body had more directions than the cave allowed. One loop wrapped around Claire's waist. Her pendant flared white. I pulled harder. The beast screamed through the floor and tore backward. Claire's eyes met mine. No private thought, no hidden confession, just one visible fact. She knew I would follow. The worm swallowed her into the living crack. Ethan hit the ground where she had been and screamed her name so hard his voice broke. The cave team froze. I did not! Claire's pendant signal burned below us, moving fast through a tunnel that had not existed 1 minute earlier. The Fireseat archive opened in my vision, no request, no warning long enough to be useful. Forbidden file unlocking. Abyss pursuit route detected. I tightened my grip on the Crimson Dragon Spear and stepped into the living tunnel before the cave could decide whether to close. Claire Donovan had been taken because we found the truth, so I followed the signal down.